Excuses be gone. How to change lifelong, self-defeating thinking habits. And I'm Dr. Waynedyer. Introduction. I spent the year 2006 immersed in the ancient teachings of Lao Tzu, studying his monumental tome, the Tao Te Ching. I read, meditated, lived, and then wrote an essay on each of the 81 verses of the Tao, which many have called the wisest book ever written. That collection of essays is titled, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, Living the Wisdom of the Tao. I learned, and to this day practice, what to think, although all that Lao Tzu taught me in that year is beyond my abilities to describe completely. I find I now choose thoughts that are flexible, not rigid, soft, not hard. I think with humility, not arrogance, with detachment, not attachment. I practice thinking small and accomplishing big things, as well as thinking in harmony with nature, rather than with my ego. The idea of not interfering replaces meddling and advising. I prefer peaceful solutions over the notion of fighting to solve disputes. I opt for contentment rather than ambition, arriving, not striving. And most significantly, I choose thoughts that are congruous with the great Tao, or God, rather than the illusions of self-importance conjured up by the ego. Excuses Be Gone, the book you're presently listening to, was also influenced by that eminent master Lao Tzu. Since the Tao Te Ching taught me what kind of thinking harmonized with my higher self, I asked Lao Tzu for advice on how to change long-established habits of thought. I realized that knowing what to think does not necessarily clarify how to go about changing a lifetime of habitual thinking. Thus, I've drawn on Lao Tzu's wisdom by contemplating his teachings and asking for his guidance on what it takes to bring about a change in the long-held habits of thought that manifest as excuses. Through a process of writing that felt as though I were being directed by a force larger than myself, the Excuses Be Gone paradigm evolved with what appears to be the cooperation of this man named Lao Tzu, who lived some 2,500 years ago. This paradigm works. I've taken many people through the 7 questions that constitute this exciting new paradigm, and I've seen powerful changes take place to my and to their amazement. I've even worked the paradigm on myself and turned some habits of thought around almost magically. By examining the support system that individuals have erected over a long period of time, often going back to early childhood, and putting these time-worn thoughts through the 7 steps in this paradigm, I find that excuses begin to fade away. They become replaced with thoughts that speak fervently, almost shouting, yes, you can change any excuse pattern no matter how long or pervasive the conditioning process has been. I've seen men and women give up a lifetime of being overweight or addicted to all manner of substances by simply applying the principles that are inherent in the Excuses Be Gone approach to life. If you're truly serious about changing any long-established habits of thought that have led you to use excuses as your rationale for staying the same, then I encourage you to follow the practices presented in this program. The great poet Rainer Maria Rilke once observed that behind the world our names enclose is the nameless, our true archetype, and home. I would add, behind the world your excuses describe is the great Tao. Let yourself be lived by it, and all of those excuses will fade away so that you finally come home once and for all. Part 1. Identifying and removing habitual thinking. Quote, every human being's essential nature is perfect and faultless. But after years of immersion in the world, we easily forget our roots and take on a counterfeit nature. Unquote. That's Lao Tzu. Chapter 1. Yes, you can change old habits. Quote, I wasn't kissing her, I was whispering in her mouth. Unquote. That's from Chico Marx, which was his response to his wife when she caught him kissing a chorus girl. And another quote, an excuse is worse and more terrible than a lie. Unquote. Alexander Pope. It's been said that old habits die hard, implying that it's next to impossible to change long-standing thought patterns. Yet the book you are listening to was created out of a belief that entrenched ways of thinking and acting can indeed be eradicated. Furthermore, the most effective means for eliminating habitual thoughts is to go to work on the very system that created and continues to support these thinking habits. This system is made up of a long list of explanations and defenses that can be summed up in one word: excuses. Hence, the title of this book is really a statement to yourself, as well as to that system of explanations you've created. It is my intention that all excuses be gone. Can I make dramatic changes in the way I live? Is it possible to change self-defeating thoughts and behaviors that have been my constant companions for as long as I can remember? Can I really do a U-turn and deprogram myself when I've never known any other way to think and act? I've been depressed, or stubborn, or overweight, or scared, or clumsy, or unlucky, or any other descriptor you choose to insert here, my entire life. Is it even feasible or practical for me to contemplate removing these old and familiar ways of being and open myself up to a brand new me? This program is my answer to those questions. Yes, there is a way available to you right here and right now. You can relinquish any unwanted but long-held thoughts that have become your self-definition. Excuses Be Gone presents a powerful and easy method for removing deeply embedded thinking habits that are preventing you from being the person you want to be. The power of your beliefs to keep you stuck is enormous. Those deeply ingrained notions act as chains, restricting you from experiencing your unique destiny. You have the capacity to loosen these chains and make them work for, rather than against you, to the point that you can alter what you thought were scientific explanations for your human limitations and characteristics. I'm referring to things such as your genetic makeup, your DNA, or the early conditioning imposed upon you when you were an embryo or an infant or a young child. Yes, you heard that correctly. Your beliefs, all of those formless energy patterns that you've adopted as your self-image, have the ability to change dramatically and give you the power to conquer unwanted traits or what you unhappily presume to be your fate. The implacable sciences of genetics and medicine, psychology, and sociology may cause you to feel helpless about overcoming proven facts that are said to determine virtually everything about you. I can't help the way I think. I've always been this way. It's my nature, and it can't be changed. This is all I've ever known. After all, you take what's handed to you, and you make the best of it. All of these are the laments of those who opt to use excuses to explain their lives away. I will be using the word excuses for what many call conditioned ways of being throughout this program. Every self-limiting thought that you employ to explain why you're not living life to the absolute fullest, so you're feeling purposeful, content, and fully alive, is something you can challenge and reverse regardless of how long you've held that belief and no matter how rooted in tradition, science, or life experiences it may be. Even if it seems like an insurmountable obstacle, you can overcome these thoughts, and you can begin by noticing how they've been working to hold you back. Then you can embark on a deprogramming effort that allows you to live an excuse-free life, one day at a time, one miracle at a time, one new belief at a time. The new word on beliefs. Have you ever wanted to change some facet of your personality, but another part of you insisted that this is impossible because your genetic program is responsible for how you think, feel, and behave? That latter part of you believes in biologically determined unhappy genes, or shy genes, or fat genes, and bad luck genes, among many others. Due to your luck of the draw, it will tell you you have a set of misery genes, along with a sizable cachet of weight-gaining genes, if those are the aspects you want to change. This part means to be helpful, but while it probably wants to protect you from the disappointment of failure, it keeps you stuck in an excuse-driven life. Using the excuse of genetic programming not to do anything about the personal characteristics that you dislike is popular and clearly acceptable in today's culture. So with the aforementioned genetic predisposition as an excuse, living in a constant or unnecessary terror might be excused as an overabundance of fear cells emanating from microscopic strands of DNA attached to your biological originating cellular structure, and you're stuck with it. Thus, a formidable excuse is formulated. No wonder a part of you gets indignant when you attempt to be brave, since it believes, I can't change my biology. A sense of powerlessness ensues when it comes to altering anything about yourself that has become so established that it feels like who you really are. This is particularly true when you observe traits and characteristics that have been with you for as long as you can recall. As if to further cement the idea that you've always been this way into your total worldview, the limiting part of you asserts, there's nothing that can be done about it. After all, I can't change my basic biology. Excuse me. Thanks to the principles I share in this program, you most certainly can. The belief that we cannot change our biology is beginning to be challenged by scientific scholars engaged in cell biology research. It seems that humans do have the ability to change and even reverse some of their genetic blueprints. Openness and curiosity, along with a desire to be free from excuses, are the basic prerequisites for learning about the exciting evidence concerning genetic predisposition. One of the pioneers of the new way of understanding DNA, Bruce Lipton, Ph.D., is a cell biologist who taught medical students before resigning to do research and lecture full-time. In a groundbreaking book called The Biology of Belief, Lipton writes that life is not controlled by genes. In fact, his research led him to the conclusion that they're strictly blueprints. The invisible, formless energy that constitutes the gene's environment is the architect that turns the blueprint into this mystery we call life. Listing hundreds of research results, he concludes that the old medical model depicting life's essential building blocks as physical particles is misleading, incomplete, and in most cases, false. Treating illness more or less exclusively with drugs or surgery to facilitate a healing begs to be re-examined. Lipton's conclusions led to his resignation from the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine because he discovered that what he'd been teaching, the model of physical particles as the controlling force in life, was incorrect. He realized that both the human body and the universe itself are mental and spiritual in nature. There's a field of invisible energy with a total absence of physical properties that creates the particles that we call cells. And this invisible field is the sole governing function of the body. So, since the body is not exclusively a physical machine, we can all find out how to control and impact our own health. Even more astonishing is Lipton's understanding that our personal belief systems, including our perceptions, have the capacity to trump our genetic inheritance and our cellular DNA. It's possible to influence the infinitesimally tiny particles we've come to believe are the ultimate determiners of our lives. That is, when we change the way we think and learn new ways of perceiving, we can actually change our DNA. In other words, you can impact and alter your genetic structure by modifying how you see yourself and your place in this glorious mystery called life. Your perceptions have the power to change your genetic makeup. Your beliefs can and do control your biology. Now, this may sound radical or even impossible, yet it is this awareness that will lead you to say goodbye to the excuses you've unwittingly adopted. I encourage you to immerse yourself in the biology of belief. You'll be inspired to reset your mind to the possibilities that your beliefs carry far more weight than you realized in determining what you can do, what you'll undertake, and how far you're capable of going. Let's take a look now at another piece of research that will help you realize what you're capable of achieving. The placebo effect. That the mind controls the body is hardly up for dispute. You've probably heard of documented studies where sugar pills given to a control group, believing that they're a remedy for, say, arthritis, turn out to be as effective as the drug being administered for the arthritis. This placebo effect apparently occurs due to a belief in the effectiveness of the pill. But consider how powerful the mind is when it goes beyond administering a sugar pill to the world of surgery. This is an actual research project. Quote, a Baylor School of Medicine study published in 2002 in the New England Journal of Medicine evaluated surgery for patients with severe, debilitating knee pain. The lead author of the study, Dr. Bruce Moseley, knew that knee surgery helped his patients. All good surgeons know there's no placebo effect in surgery. But Moseley was trying to figure out which part of the surgery was giving his patients relief. The patients in the study were divided into 3 groups. Mosley shaved the damaged cartilage in the knee of one group. For another group, he flushed out the knee joint, removing material thought to be causing the inflammatory effect. Both of these constitute standard treatment for arthritic knees. The third group got, quote, fake, unquote, fake surgery. The patient was sedated. Mosley made 3 standard incisions and then talked and acted just as he would have during a real surgery. He even splashed salt water to simulate the sound of the knee washing procedure. After 40 minutes, Mosley sewed up the incisions as if he had done the surgery, and all 3 groups were prescribed the same post-operative care, which included an exercise program. The results were shocking. Yes, the groups who received surgery as expected improved, but the placebo group improved just as much as the other 2 groups, despite the fact that there are 650,000 surgeries yearly for arthritic knees at a cost of about $5,000 each. The results were clear to Mosley. Quote, my skill as a surgeon had no benefit on these patients. The entire benefit of surgery for osteoarthritis of the knee was the placebo effect. Television news programs graphically illustrated the stunning results. Footage showed members of the placebo group walking and playing basketball, in short, doing things they reported they could not do before their, quote, surgery, unquote. The placebo patients didn't find out for 2 years that they'd gotten fake surgery. One member of the placebo group, Tim Perez, who had to walk with a cane before the surgery, is now able to play basketball with his grandchildren. He summed up the theme of this book when he told the Discovery Health Channel, in this world, anything is possible when you put your mind to it. I know that your mind can work miracles. And all of this is from The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton. I believe that this kind of research offers motivating evidence for making a commitment to the excuses be gone paradigm. Another recent procedure may completely reverse an old medical model. It seems that a man's forefinger was accidentally sliced off at the top knuckle, and by altering genetic instructions, a team succeeded in regrowing a new half-inch top to his finger in 4 weeks. Fingers are genetically programmed to stave off infection when an injury like this occurs, so the medical team replaced his sliced-off stub with stem cells programmed to grow a finger. The subsequent new growth included the nail, cuticle, and flesh. This man's DNA was overturned by introducing newly programmed instructions. In a variety of studies on severe depression, heart disease, rheumatoid arthritis, ulcers, and even cancer, the power of the mind to overcome these maladies trumps the conventional medical wisdom of treating the cells rather than the environment in which they reside. The new biology is clearly indicating that beliefs, some of which are conscious and most of which are subconscious or habitual, determine our physical and our mental health along with our level of happiness and success. Author James Allen observes, we do not attract that which we want, but that which we are. I've contemplated this idea for a long time. Until recently, I accepted the idea that what we are is pretty much formulated by a complex genetic input and strands of DNA inherited from our parents and other relatives. But I've really changed my mind. My new personal philosophy is that who I am is first and foremost determined by what I believe. And that leads me to consciously focus on the fact that limitations or traits inherited from my ancestors are absolutely not the final word. For me, there's now a surprise tucked into James Allen's quote. By changing my beliefs, I change who I am. As a result of this shift in my beliefs, I've attracted some new and wondrous features into my life, including being prompted to write this book, Excuses Be Gone, and share its insights with you. As you work your way through this program, remember that what you are is what you believe, not what you were handed genetically. If you stay focused on what you are as a set of beliefs, you will align with the same kind of energy. As you listen to this program, remind yourself that you attract what you are, not what you want. And what you are is your beliefs, not your cells. As the biology of belief establishes, your mental activity is strong enough to overcome material particles and the influence of early conditioning and programming that you unwittingly adopted through your formative years. Your lingering early programming. In addition to our genetic makeup, the other big excuse that most of us use to justify unhappiness, poor health, and lack of success is the family and cultural conditioning we've been programmed with. To that end, there's a fascinating area of inquiry known as memetics, which deals with the mind and is analogous to the relationship of genetics to the body. So as the basic unit of genetics is the gene, the basic unit of memetics is the meme. Yet unlike an atom or an electron, the meme has no physical properties. According to Richard Brody in his work Virus of the Mind, it's a thought or a belief or an attitude in your mind that can spread to and from other people's minds. Richard Dawkins, the Oxford biologist who coined the word meme, describes the process in his book The Selfish Gene. My understanding is that memetics originates from the word mimic, meaning to observe and copy behavior. This behavior is repeated and passed on to others, and on and on and on the mimicking process goes. The key point is this: transferring an idea, an attitude, or a belief to another is done mentally. We won't find memes by turning up the magnification on any microscope. They pass from mind to mind via hundreds of thousands of imitations. By the age of 6 or 7, we've all been programmed with an endless inventory of memes that act very much like a virus. They aren't necessarily good or bad. They simply spread easily throughout the population. Once a meme is in your mind, it can and will subtly influence your behavior. This is one of the ways you acquire a huge category of excuses that keep you in a rut. For example, my memes made me do it. I can't help it. These ideas or beliefs or attitudes have been passed on to me from one mind to another for generations, and there's nothing I can do about it. It's just the way I think. These memes have been the building blocks of my mind, and I can't deprogram myself from these viruses of the mind. They just keep replicating and spreading. These ideas or memes are so much a part of me that it's impossible for me to disinfect myself from the results of all of these mind viruses. Every excuse you hear in this program is, in reality, a meme that was once planted in your mind. Richard Brody uses the word virus to describe what happens in the mind through mimicking and imitating. The core purpose of a virus is to make as many copies of itself as possible by penetrating wherever an opening occurs and spreading itself to as many hosts as possible. Similarly, you're a host for countless memes. They're the entrenched thoughts and behavioral characteristics of your personality. You spent years repeating and replicating ideas that were traveling from one mind to another, spreading these ideas and beliefs to many others. Memes die hard because they become who you think you are. Shedding them is like trying to discard one of your vital organs, and it taps your life energy. Many memes, in fact, were firmly implanted by your parents during your early family history. It will come as no surprise that they were easily transferred to you from your parents or your grandparents. Since ideas get fixed in your mind by spreading from other minds, they become your reality, often for your entire life. Personally, I find it fascinating that there are invisible little units that I've allowed to be implanted in my mind which continue to impact how I think and behave today. Moreover, I've acted on these mind viruses and have passed them on to my children. Unwittingly, I've become a carrier. Here are some examples that continue to crop up in my life. I grew up with a depression mentality. Even though I was born in 1940 at the tail end of the Great Depression, my parents and grandparents lived through hard economic times and shared a lot of their scarcity messages with me. Don't spend recklessly, save for the future because things will only get worse. There are shortages everywhere. Food is in minimal supply. Don't waste anything. Eat everything on your plate. You don't have enough money. These ideas were invisibly passed on to me as I grew up in the Midwest in the 1940s. I mimicked or imitated these ideas and allowed myself to become an instrument of these mind viruses. They grew in me, and I spread them wherever I went until they became fully ensconced in my mind and many of my actions. Although I'm now in my 60s, these memes are very much alive today and are still attempting to replicate and spread. To some extent, they serve a purpose, although they occasionally work overtime. My world isn't endangered by poverty, for instance, but I'm still a financially cautious person who likes to save rather than dispose of items retaining some usefulness. I respect those attitudes, and they have no doubt originated in my childhood by being programmed into my habitual subconscious mind. But do I really need to retrieve used-up toothpaste tubes discarded by my children in waste paper baskets and strenuously squeeze out another 2 weeks' worth of product when I've earned enough to buy the entire toothpaste factory? Here's another mind virus I've noticed lately. I must have imitated sulking when I didn't get my way as the youngest of 3 boys, or as a child in a series of foster homes, because I remember my adult forms of sulking, pouting, and even yelling when I was in my 30s and 40s. Recently, I was alone in my office, feeling frustrated because I couldn't locate something I needed. As my frustration mounted, I became increasingly irrational. I raised my voice, loudly protested, although there was no one else there, used profanity, and stomped around the house until I was distraught and had given myself an upset stomach. This incident lasted 1 or 2 minutes, and then I finally calmed down and found the book I thought was the culprit in my private drama. Why am I admitting to this silly scene, given my desire to be seen as a rational spiritual teacher? Because it illustrates a point I'm making in this opening chapter. As an embryo, an infant, and a young boy, I must have seen this kind of behavior and mimicked it. The meme infected me, replicating and spreading from a relative or a friend's mind to mine. And now, some 60 years later, I could have a built-in excuse for behaving irrationally enough to feel embarrassed by my infantile behavior and for making myself sick. The excuse is right there for me to use. I've always overreacted to frustration. It's just a part of me. I don't have any control over stomping around and blaming who knows what, using mild profanity and being immobilized because I can't tolerate my frustration. The possibilities are inexhaustible for excusing this behavior. But the question I must ask myself is, do I really want to hold on to these habitual behaviors that are ultimately capable of making me sick? Just like me, you have thousands of imitated thoughts and actions that were absorbed through contact with individuals in your childhood environment. When mind viruses serve you, it's a pleasure to observe them and express silent gratitude. But when they continue to plague your life, inhibiting you from achieving your desires, then you're on notice to start shedding them. The point is that these mind viruses, or memes, can work against you in a myriad of ways today, but you can also change them. I hasten to add here that by becoming aware of my own inclinations to use old, no longer sensible or practical responses to my frustrations, and by being willing to do the deprogramming work on my long-held thoughts, I now notice those infantile temptations and choose a healthier way. The bonus is that I'm more effective at locating the missing items I used to perplex over. Thinking that you'll always be poor, unlucky, overweight, or underweight, that you'll always have an addictive personality, that you'll never attract your soulmate, that you'll continue to have angry outbursts, that you'll always lack musical, artistic, or athletic ability, or that you'll forever be shy because you've always felt that way, these are excuses. And when you see them for what they are, you can eliminate them. On the other hand, if you find them to be firmly entrenched personality traits and habits of thinking that can't be challenged, you'll symbolically suck your thumb and cry when life doesn't appear to cooperate. Believe me, though it's far more energizing and fulfilling to practice the excuses begone paradigm, using a new set of thinking habits will enhance your life and help you attract all that you really are. At the same time, you'll be modeling a new and a better way to live for the people in your environment who are unwitting victims of the excuse virus. You've been a mimetic superstar since birth, mimicking beliefs and behaviors from other influences beyond your family and social structure. Influences from your religious training, ethnic culture, television programming and advertising and the like have become a fixed part of your habitual mind. It isn't my purpose to examine all the ways you've acquired beliefs, since that's something only you can do. I wrote this book and created this program to help you gain awareness of the excuses you're using for behaving in ways that don't help you to achieve the level of health, happiness, and success you desire. I agree with the Emperor Marcus Aurelius, known for his brilliance as a leader of men and a spiritually conscious being. He is reported to have said, quote, "Our life is what our thoughts make it," unquote. Your behaviors are supported by your thinking patterns. That is, your thoughts truly make or break your life. While some of them are operating on a conscious level and are easy to recognize, others are deeply embedded within your subconscious. However, I prefer to call this deeply programmed or almost automatic second nature part of you the habitual mind. For me, subconscious implies being below the level of creative awareness, a sort of mysterious entity that can't be known. Since the central theme of this program is that anything used to explain thinking and acting in the same self-sabotaging ways is an excuse, it seems to me that calling it subconscious is really underscoring this notion that I can't help it, I can't talk about it, and I certainly can't change it, because it is, after all, below my conscious level where I do all of my living. I personally find it hard to work with a part of myself that's not within my conscious life. Therefore, I choose to call this huge reservoir of emptiness a reservoir that pushes us all away from our divine Dharma, as well as our optimal level of health, happiness, and success, the habitual mind. And while these types of thoughts might seem to be unreachable, I assure you that they'll come to the surface with an excuses-begone attitude. Kissing the big excuses goodbye. This opening chapter has introduced you to recent research and observations that are increasing our understanding of human nature. My purpose is to help you use this information to alter the parts of your life that are hampered by old science and old thinking. In summary, there are basically two big excuses we all utilize. The first one is, I can't really help the way I am. After all, people can't change their DNA. My genetic makeup is the culprit. The new biology says that there's an energy field surrounding and contained within all of your cells, and this field is influenced by your beliefs. Moreover, it is out of this field that all particles are created. It's the sole governing function of the body. Something like 95% of us do not have genetic reasons for illness, depression, fear, or any other condition. Here in the 21st century, science invites you to stop believing that you're a victim of your genetic makeup, because a large body of evidence demonstrates empirically that your beliefs can change your genes. I encourage you to examine this mind-bending idea at greater depth than I'm able to offer here. There's an invisible part of you that you can call intelligence, higher function, Tao, thought, belief, spirit, God. You choose. The second big excuse is rooted in your early history and family conditioning. It impacts you in so many ways that you'll probably feel it's impossible to be free of aspect of yourself. Kiss this one goodbye as well. Just because you've been infected with a tradition meme and programmed to repeat it and pass it on to future generations, this doesn't mean you're unable to disinfect yourself and reprogram your inner world. These funny little non-things called memes are thoughts that you allow to become your master. And make no mistake about it, every excuse you've ever used is really a meme disguised as an explanation. Yet you can deprogram yourself from these mind viruses. A virus isn't concerned with whether it's contributing to your well-being or your ill-being, because it only wants to penetrate, replicate, and spread. But you don't have to be a victim of anything that was transferred from another mind to yours. Your beliefs have made these memes seem like a second nature to you. While excuses are just thoughts or beliefs, you are the decider of what you ultimately store away as your guide to life. A short discourse from the Dhammapada gives a sense of the route individuals travel as they advance toward their own inherent perfection and self-realization. Savor this ancient wisdom and incorporate its message with the modern understanding of genetics and memetics. Quote, all that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts. If one speaks or acts with a pure thought, happiness follows one like a shadow that never leaves. Unquote. Chapter 2, Your Two Minds. Quote, the hell to be endured hereafter, of which theology tells, is no worse than the hell we make for ourselves in this world by habitually fashioning our characters in the wrong way. We are spinning our own fates, good or evil. Unquote. That's from William James, The Principles of Psychology. Some time ago, I challenged myself to study the process of making dramatic thought transitions using attitudes and behaviors that had been with me for a lifetime. For several years, I scrutinized precisely what I did to undo old patterns in myself. This activity led me to question basic beliefs about the legitimacy of environmental and genetic authority in determining who I am and what I can change. Due to my success in modifying my thoughts and subsequently my actions, I developed a new paradigm for eliminating unwanted, lifelong thinking habits. At first glance, much of what I'm sharing here may seem radical and inconsistent with established psychological and sociological academic tenets. So be it. Here is what I believe. This is how I see it. In a brilliant one-act play by Jean-Paul Sartre, titled No Exit, the central character states emphatically, quote, a man is what he wills himself to be, unquote. This idea of willpower is a core theme in much of my earlier writing, and I still strongly subscribe to the belief that we all have within us an invisible force that we recognize as will. But I also know that there are many facets of our lives that seem to go beyond the pale of the will. For example, it often isn't enough to eliminate lifelong habits. Identifying and changing some thoughts, particularly those that have been with us for what seems like forever, requires a brand new perceptual process. In contrast to Sartre's observation, Ralph Waldo Emerson offers this, quote, "Man is a stream whose source is hidden. Our being is descending into us from we know not whence." In the 1600s, Benedict de Spinoza made a similar observation about the human mind, which I read in my college days and have never forgotten. Quote, "The human mind is part of the infinite intellect of God," unquote. I still apply this to myself whenever I question how or why I got myself into one of those many predicaments I brought upon myself throughout my adult life. The mind that Spinoza is referring to has no form or substance. It's always working, even while you're sleeping, and most significantly is your connection to your source. Viewed in this light, it is your personal God component, always with you and always ready to serve you in fulfilling another of Spinoza's observations, quote, "The mind's highest good is the knowledge of God," unquote. Yes, your mind is largely responsible for who and what you've become, but there's also a beingness buried within you in a place where your thoughts originate. Emerson suggests that it's a mystery, quote, "descending into us from we know not whence," unquote. These two ideas about human nature combine in you to form what I call two minds. The one that's frequently referred to as your conscious mind is what I call creative consciousness, and the other is your habitual mind, which, as I explained in the last chapter, is what I call the subconscious mind as well. Yet whether they originate in creative consciousness or the habitual mind, I believe that any thought patterns that don't enhance and expand your joyous development are excuses. As you'll see, this means that you have far more influence than you've probably been led to believe to rearrange and change ineffectual and harmful beliefs or ideas. Creative consciousness. In this paradigm, the conscious mind is more accurately described as the creative conscious mind. This close-to-the-surface, non-habitual mind makes endless decisions about what you wear, what you eat, what appointments you keep, what time you go to bed, and thousands of other daily choices in your life. This invisible and placeless place is the part of your brain that makes and cancels plans, adds new ones, and thinks continuously. This creative consciousness is always there to the point that even when you want to shut it down, it can be extremely difficult to do so. The thoughts just keep on coming. What an immeasurable benefit to consider this vast, mysterious mind is really part of the source that creates everything, as Spinoza suggests. So if your mind is a creator, just as God's mind is a creator of the universe, then it can perform at the absolutely highest level imaginable. The creative force asks for nothing and has no ego. It's simply an instrument of giving, providing, and offering at all times with no consideration for itself. Put another way, the highest calling of your conscious creative mind is to be the human equivalent of God's mind. Yet you'll probably agree that most of your thoughts focus on the relatively tiny universe of your human self. Rest assured that you can choose to learn how to shift your everyday thoughts away from what am I doing, what can I get, and how quickly can I get it, to Spinoza's concept of discovering the highest functioning, all-knowing part of yourself. This may sound like a tall order, but I guarantee that reprogramming your creative conscious mind is really a simple matter. The endless thoughts of me are close to the surface and highly susceptible to change. You'll have the opportunity to practice this when you study the paradigm for eliminating excuses in the third part of this program. The creative conscious mind can do almost anything you instruct it to do. It can change thoughts at your bidding, practice affirmations you create, wander in blissful meditation at your invitation, and learn almost any new skill at your insistence. It can think of everything you direct it to. Through discipline, effort, and continual practice, it can also accomplish almost anything you focus your thoughts on. The problem with creative consciousness is that its constant shifts and changes can overwhelm and flood you. It's often referred to as the monkey mind because it keeps flitting about almost continuously, first having one thought and then another and then still another. Most of this close-to-the-surface mental activity is the ego's attempt to dance to the beat of rhythms and influences that are outside of you, which are probably unwanted and unnecessary, and running your life without your permission. Your creative consciousness has developed a weak connection that's full of static, so its signals from a part of the infinite intellect of God are silenced by an ego-based accompaniment that broadcasts, "What's in it for me? How do I look? How much money can I make? How can I get ahead? Whom do I have to please? Why are there so many demands on me? On and on these thoughts come and then go, and then come right back again. There is statistical evidence that the conscious mind occupies approximately 5% of the total workings of the brain, leaving 95% to the realm of the subconscious. Percentages interest me less than the ability to sense your mind as not some amorphous component of your being that's constantly changing from one ego-based thought to another, but rather as evidence of your nature or your connection to the infinite intellect of creation. This style of magnificent respect alerts you to your ability to access the highest functions of your mind. The habitual or the subconscious mind. According to the author of The User Illusion, the subconscious mind has been calculated to process millions of environmental stimuli per second versus only a few dozen environmental stimuli per second that the conscious mind can process. Conventional psychological wisdom says that much of what you believe about yourself, along with almost all of your daily actions, is programmed into your subconscious or habitual mind. You spend a great deal of your time operating on automatic pilot, so to speak. In fact, you could visualize your two minds as co-pilots. The conscious mind is aware of its thoughts, but is a minor player, like a real pilot in training, while the subconscious takes care of virtually everything you need to think, say, or do. I take exception to this assertion that the habitual mind runs the show, doing everything that the creative mind isn't paying attention to. According to this view, the habitual mind is like a computer running a downloaded program that will play throughout your life. It's been permanently programmed from the moment of conception, and it's next to impossible to get new software to rewrite existing programs. I simply cannot agree that a part of your mind was nourished by ideas, images, and input that continue to be necessary for your sustainability today. It's my contention that this is a false belief that is easily revealed as an excuse. I don't believe that anyone has to live with the belief that they have programming in their subconscious mind that can't be rewritten. I'll explain my perspective on this issue. If you're the way you are because of something that's subconscious, that is, below your level of waking consciousness, then it's obviously something you can do nothing about. You can't even talk about it since it's beyond your conscious mind. For the same reason, you can't understand it, you can't challenge it, and most egregiously, you can't change or fix it. How can you fix something that's totally inaccessible? It would be like attempting to repair a broken watch that was sealed away in a vault. Obviously, you would need the combination to enter into that previously inaccessible area. If it's subconscious and thus automatic, then you wouldn't have a choice. To me, that's the most regrettable thing about this subconscious model, believing that you don't have a choice. The truth, as I see it, is that everything you think, say, and do is a choice, and you don't need to think, speak, or act as you've done for your entire life. When you abandon making choices, you enter the vast world of excuses. Right now, while listening to this program, decide to begin choosing instead of excusing. You can instantly decide to reprogram and direct your life toward the level of happiness, success, and health that you prefer. I've had a downloaded pattern since childhood, and it concerns my stroke in my daily swim. Some people who have observed me making my way through the ocean have said that I swim as though I've had a stroke. I never paid much attention to what others said until I discovered that the way I kicked my feet, using only my right leg while my left leg stayed motionless, was putting undue pressure on my back and throwing me out of alignment as I practiced yoga and simply got older. When I was advised to change the way I swam by kicking both legs simultaneously, my first reaction was to think, I can't change my swimming style. I've been doing it this way for almost 60 years. I even swam competitively with this Dyer stroke. That is something I've downloaded into me from thousands of hours of swimming and is a subconscious habit. Yet after putting to the test the ideas that I wrote about in this book, I was able to rather easily adapt a brand new swimming stroke, even though I was 65 years of age at the time. Just like my being able to rather quickly change a 60-year-old habit, you can access the program you're operating with by examining your thoughts. Your habitual mind takes over when you choose to ignore your conscious beliefs, and you just continue to act in ways you've been programmed to. But you can shift to your creative mind and explore your options. You don't have to buy the old argument that a part of you is inaccessible, unreachable, or buried so deep down inside that undoing early programming is impossible. You'll never successfully reprogram your computer or your mind by telling it to stop spewing out the same old garbage. You're stuck until you change to a new operating system or download some new files. But first, you have to know that this is an option. Think of the many ways in which you identify yourself, particularly in the gray area of deeply entrenched thoughts. Identify the programs in your habitual mind that are so outdated that they're hampering your system. Those attitudes, beliefs, and thoughts that don't serve you are excuses, ultimately destined to be sent to the trash bin. Mark Twain had this wonderful observation about how we change old, unwanted ways of thinking and behaving. Quote, "Habit is habit, and not to be flung out of the window by any man, but coaxed downstairs a step at a time." Unquote. My objective is to help you coax down the stairs those ways of thinking that keep you from living your life at the optimal level. Should this seem daunting, know that it doesn't have to be a lengthy, winding staircase that takes years to traverse. Or, to use the computer metaphor, your internal system is as capable of change as contemporary operating systems are. Freedom from long-established habits, whether they originated genetically or mimetically, is attainable with the excuses-begone paradigm presented in Part 3. Reaching into the part of your mind that works on automatic pilot as a result of early programming and conditioning isn't nearly as troublesome as allowing it to continue to run your life. It's actually quite uncomplicated and won't take a great deal of time to shift from old habits to new choices. You are a part of the same intelligence that creates worlds. In fact, your mind is that intelligence. Knowing this, how could you consider a part of you to be unreachable or unprogrammable? No part of you is unreachable, no matter how automatic or habitual it may have become. Certain aspects of your life may seem to be governed by a force that you're unaware of, and you can feel that there's no possibility of choice, and you're imprisoned by your excuse inventory. I can't really help it, it's just my nature, I've always been this way. Talk about futility. However, anytime you choose, you can access your habitual mind and begin to reprogram it, changing patterns that may have been useful once but no longer work for you. Seeing yourself through a new lens. The quote at the beginning of this chapter was written almost 120 years ago by the father of modern psychology, William James, who urges us to be aware of the danger of living as if there are no choices. I am personally convinced that everyone has a capacity for greatness that transcends anything they've been taught to believe, that every being who's ever existed is in fact a portion of the all-creating power of intention. Since we're all pieces of the infinite creative source, we should continually be telling ourselves, quote, "I came from God, and since I must be like what I came from, I am a piece of the divine," unquote. Trying to imagine the all-creating spiritual force coming up with excuses for anything is impossible, because it is creating from its own consciousness. Now put yourself in this picture. While your mind is part of the unlimited source, it becomes limited when you believe it to be fallible, weak, impotent, or any other adjective that misidentifies with creative energy. When you edge God out in this manner, you invite ego, which is known as the false self by spiritual teachers of all persuasions, in. I invite you to try on a new lens that lets you access your false self with its ton of excuses, many of which I've detailed in the following chapter, and its belief and limitations. As it edges God out, your false self forces you to part with ideas that prove you're a spiritual being having a temporary human experience. Ego gives you a rationale for creating the rationalizations and justifications that eventually go on to direct your life. They become so embedded in what social scientists call the subconscious that your habitual mind turns into an excuse machine. Allow yourself to look through your new lens by acquiring a set of beliefs that includes your spiritual or God-realized nature. It may feel a little unfamiliar or even mysterious at first, but be willing to allow your senses to adjust to this new way of seeing. Transcend the idea that your genetic makeup is static. With your new ability to perceive ego, you'll become a wizard who easily dethrones the dictator of your false self, bypassing early conditioning imposed by people in your environment who have edged God out. As you get comfortable with this new way of seeing yourself, ask yourself the following question. If no one told me who I was, who would I be? Quietly meditate on this by spending some time in the spaciousness of not knowing. Imagine that your subconscious mind is non-existent, and there's no storage receptacle for excuses during your life. There's just an open and inviting clear space inside of you, a tabula rasa or a blank slate with a magical surface that nothing adheres to. You might imagine that your everyday conscious mind simply doesn't absorb the opinions of the folks you grew up with. In this little fantasy, there's never been anyone telling you who you are. So who are you? When I did this exercise, I found that my answer to the above question was quite simple. I would be anything that I and only I decided to be in this moment and all future moments. As the song goes, I've got to be me. And that means jettisoning all of the excuses I've accumulated. My habitual life wouldn't be based upon anyone's early programming, since there wouldn't be anyone who ever told me who I am. Or, as the Tao teaches, quote, look to nature for your sustenance. Look to the great mysterious Tao, or God, that does nothing and leaves nothing undone. Observe how the entire universe and all of these beautiful Tao-centered creatures work, unquote. Tao-centered creatures allow, they trust, they live here in the present moment, and, most assuredly, they have no need for any excuses. Applying your fresh perspective to common excuse categories. Now I'd like to show you how you can take the fresh perspective you've gained by looking through your new lens. The excuse categories of genetics, memetics, and consciousness are about to be shown the door. Your new outlook on genetic programming. I'm sure you're familiar with some variation of this popular excuse, I can't help it, it runs in my family. New biology, however, has proven that beliefs can override DNA. So move what you thought was a fact to the excuse file by changing how you view its authenticity. You can change what you perceive as immutable and beyond your reach by eliminating excuses such as the ones in the genetic excuse category. As my friend Greg Braden writes in his astonishing book, The Spontaneous Healing of Belief, quote, paradigm-shattering experiments published in leading-edge, peer-reviewed journals reveal that we're bathed in a field of intelligent energy that fills what used to be thought of as empty space. Additional discoveries show beyond any reasonable doubt that this field responds to us. It rearranges itself in the presence of our heart-based feelings and beliefs, and this is the revolution that changes everything, unquote. Here are 2 exercises to practice applying these ideas to your genetic program. 1. Be open to the scientifically verified idea that your beliefs have the power to rearrange and change the material world. Start by making this particularly pertinent for you in your physical and personal destiny by contemplating the more things of this nature are possible than you've previously experienced. Allow these new thoughts about your biology to gently enter your belief system. Encourage yourself to consider your beliefs as things that affect you, perhaps even more than physical particles do. If it suits you, you may even see beliefs as non-particles in the non-material or spiritual world. 2. Create an affirmation that attests to this new no excuses philosophy for genetics. Something from the following list would work fine, but feel free to come up with your own. I can change my body's infirmities by shifting my beliefs. Affirm, I have the power to undo old thoughts about my genetic destiny. Affirm, if I stay with them and live from my heart, my beliefs can inspire new talents if I so desire. Affirm, I can heal anything by healing my beliefs first. Affirm, I intend to keep my beliefs uppermost, and I refuse to blame anything in the material world for any deficiencies in my life. Your new outlook on memetic programming. Again, this is an excuse category that you've probably depended on to justify why life isn't what you really want it to be. These are the big mind virus excuses. Quotes, my family made me the way I am, and I can't change it. My early childhood experience and all of the unfair criticism I received explain why I have low self-esteem. I'm stuck in this place because I've been infected by a multitude of mind viruses and environmental facts that have left me shortchanged when it comes to fulfilling a higher destiny. How can I change what I've imitated and mimicked for so many years? I've been infected by mind viruses, and it's impossible to change, unquote. What follows are 2 exercises to practice applying to your memetic program. 1. Affirm, I believe that I am perfectly capable of overcoming any early conditioning I have adopted as a part of my personality and my current life experience. Know that research in demonstrating that the power of thought is aligned with the universal mind, which many call the Tao or God. Just hang on to this idea for now. It will become clearer as you progress through this course in Excuses Be Gone. And 2, assert that anything that's been programmed into you and acts like a virus is perfectly capable of being deprogrammed if you decide it's worth the effort. Remind yourself that since you're not presently a victim of beliefs that were modeled for you when you were much younger, using these as excuses is no longer your method. At this point, you don't even have to know how to deprogram or disinfect yourself. All you need to believe is that you have the ability and will begin now. Here's an affirmation that will guide you to awareness and answers. Quote, I am much more powerful today than the old programs and mind viruses that I absorbed in my childhood. Unquote. Telling yourself this will make your inner teacher appear. Your new outlook on creative consciousness. The everyday activity of your creative consciousness also proliferates excuses. You might think that you have no control over the thoughts that just keep popping into your head, but consider this radical idea. Your thoughts are not located in your head. Thought is an energy system that isn't found anywhere in the physical world. The universe itself and everything in it is both mental and spiritual in nature. You create a field of energy with your thoughts, and the field creates all of the particles, or what Lao Tzu called the world of the 10,000 things. This energy field is an important function of the body. Your conscious mind is always working and connecting to this field from which everything is intended. Try applying these two exercises. Number 1, quiet the mind by practicing daily meditation. As Sogyal Rinpoche wrote in the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, quote, the gift of learning to meditate is the greatest gift you can give yourself in this life. For it is only through meditation that you can undertake the journey to discover your true nature, and so find the stability and confidence you will need to live and die well. Unquote. Find a way to give yourself that gift and access your conscious creative mind by eliminating unnecessary, unwanted, superfluous thoughts through meditation. Number 2, use positive proclamations daily that are life-enhancing and align you with the loving source of everything. Rather than allowing your thoughts to insist that something is wrong or missing, retrain your conscious creative mind with beliefs such as these. What I desire is already here. I just haven't connected to it yet. It can't be stopped because my thoughts are aligned with the mind or intellect of God. Your new outlook on habitual consciousness. In this category, you'll find excuses such as I can't help the way I am because I've had so many limiting ideas programmed into me. It's my subconscious, so I can't even reach in there and examine it, let alone deprogram myself. If you believe that your mind is below your level of conscious awareness, you've created a ready excuse to use whenever it's difficult to change your thinking. And if the self-limiting thoughts have been with you for years, it seems like a perfect excuse. So rename the subconscious mind the habitual mind. Habit implies that you've made the same choices over time, and your thoughts and behaviors are simply accustomed to a certain way of being. It also suggests that there's room to make your thoughts less automatic and more aligned with the realm of choice. Later, you'll hear about awareness as one of the keys to bringing these thoughts into your daily experience. But for now, practice these ideas as you start to eliminate excuses of your habitual mind. Number 1, begin noticing what you're thinking as a way to weaken your reliance on the excuse of your subconscious. Repeating these quotes can be very helpful. Quote, every extension of knowledge arises from making conscious the unconscious. That was Friedrich Nietzsche. And, quote, the unconscious is dangerous only when our conscious attitude toward it becomes hopelessly false, unquote. And that's from Carl Jung. Two of the world's greatest teachers state that you can change previously unconscious thinking habits and bring them to your conscious mind. Relying upon the excuse of a subconscious mind is both false and dangerous. Why not create your version of those quotes as well? Try something like this, quote, I am perfectly capable of reaching into my own mind and changing anything about myself that is supported by my habitual thinking patterns, even if they seem to be automatic at this point in time, unquote. Speak your truth in a way that assists your choice to rid yourself of those excuses. And 2, make this a motto for your thoughts. Do good things and don't do bad things. Bad thoughts prompt you to engage in self-limiting behaviors. Good thoughts, on the other hand, support your desire and capacity to live at high levels of joy, success, and health. Here's some advice from ancient China attributed to a fictional character named Bird's Nest. Quote, long ago in China, there lived a monk who perched in a certain tree every day to meditate. No matter if the tree swayed in fierce winds and rain, the monk settled himself comfortably high up in the branches. Because of this, he was nicknamed Bird's Nest by the village folk nearby. Many of these villagers passed beneath the monk while hunting or while gathering wood in the forest, and after a time they grew used to him. Some began to stop and talk of their concerns with Bird's Nest. They liked the things he had to say, and soon Bird's Nest became known for his kind and thoughtful words. After some years, the monk's wise reputation spread throughout the province. Visitors from distant cities hiked to the remote forest for advice. Even the governor of the province decided that he, too, would like to visit Bird's Nest to discuss matters of importance. So one spring morning, the governor set off to find him. After traveling several days, he at last located Bird's Nest tree in the dense forest. The monk sat calmly, high in the topmost branches, enjoying the warmth and the bird song of spring. Looking up, the governor shouted, Bird's Nest, I am the governor of this province, and I have come a great distance to speak with you. I have a most important question. The governor waited for a reply, but heard only the pleasant sounds of leaves stirring in the breeze. The governor continued, This is my question. Tell me, Bird's Nest, what is it that all the wise ones have taught? Can you tell me the most important thing the Buddha ever said? There was a long pause, just the soft rustle of leaves again. Finally, the monk called down from the tree, This is your answer, Governor. Don't do bad things. Always do good things. That's what all the Buddhas taught. But the governor thought this answer far too simple to have walked 2 days for. Irritated and annoyed, he stammered, Don't do bad things? Always do good things? I knew that when I was 3 years old, monk. Looking down at the governor, Bird's Nest replied with a wry smile, Yes, the 3-year-old knows it, but the 80-year-old still finds it very difficult to do. End quote. When it feels difficult to do good things, remember to seek the 3-year-old within that Bird's Nest referred to. Give yourself the gift of hearing thoughts from a time before conditioning was deeply embedded. Chapter 3. Your Excuse Catalog. Quote, I know of no more encouraging fact than the unquestionable ability of man to elevate his life by a conscious endeavor. Unquote. That's Henry David Thoreau from Walden. I personally have an undeniable affinity for Henry David Thoreau's experience while communing with nature at Walden Pond in Massachusetts. I visited his home in Concord on many occasions, meditated at his desk, and actually rested on his bed to enhance this magical connection. The quote above is so meaningful to me that it actually influenced my writing of the book that you are listening to. I've occasionally been accused of being a Pollyanna, offering hope to the hopeless. Some see my philosophy concerning the human ability to elevate life to higher levels of peace, love, and joy to be naive. Being compared to Pollyanna isn't a source of discomfort for me, however. After all, here was a little girl who arrived in a town where the people were miserable and pessimistic, with doom and gloom dominating the horizon. Within a short while, the energy of Pollyanna permeated the community. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and people began to feel hope, passion, and love replacing their despair and futility. So if I'm to be compared to anyone, I find it an honor to be viewed in Pollyannish terms. I think that many of Mr. Thoreau's contemporaries might have applied a similar label to him as well. Thoreau left the corrupt world of humankind to live in the natural world, with trees, animals, and the weather as his teachers. He discovered an ecstatic awareness of a current of life coursing through the entire planet, which led to his optimism about human potential. His message is essentially this: realize the existence of the unknowable and ecstatic aspect of your existence. Know that this divine element is an intrinsic part of yourself. Begin trusting your underlying nature by becoming conscious. In other words, excuses be gone. There are 4 words in this chapter's opening quote that I want to highlight: encouraging, unquestionable, elevate, and conscious. 1. This program is encouraging you to challenge patterns and feel inspired by a newfound awareness of the life hidden beneath your excuses. Invite yourself to move out of established thought patterns and realize that there's nothing standing in your way of living at your highest levels. 2. You have an unquestionable ability to eliminate excuses. They'll get up and go when they're revealed as the false beliefs that they are. There's simply no question about this. 3. You elevate your life by taking responsibility for who you are and what you're choosing to become. You can transcend the ordinary, the mundane, and average with thoughts of greater joy and meaning. You can decide to elevate your life rather than have it stagnate or deteriorate with excuses. Go beyond where you presently are. And 4, you can bring your desires to consciousness by disconnecting the power from your subconscious so that it can't continue to run your life. Your subconscious, habitual mind is accessible, so unearth the excuses buried deep within you. Become conscious. Be encouraged by the unquestionable ability you have to elevate your life by a conscious endeavor. Remember these 4 words as you review the following list from some of the most common excuses that you probably like to free yourself from. A catalog of some common excuses. In my role as a counselor, teacher, and parent, I've heard many reasons that people use to explain an unhappy existence, and almost all of them inevitably fall into one huge category, which I call excuses. The rest of this chapter will introduce you to 18 of the most commonly used ones, along with a brief commentary about each of them. This will give you a brief primer before you go on to learn the excuses begone method that's detailed in the rest of this program. Here they are in no particular order. Number 1, excuse. It will be difficult. While this may seem like a supportable reason, it's clearly an excuse designed to discourage you. If you're honest with yourself about the difficulty you're experiencing with addiction, obesity, depression, shyness, low self-esteem, loneliness, or any other life aspect, you'll recognize the useless suffering you're hanging on to. If it's going to be difficult anyway, why not opt for some useful suffering? Still, the fact is that you have absolutely no incontrovertible evidence that what you'd like to change is in fact going to be challenging. It's just as likely to be easy for you to change your thinking as it is to be hard. Decades ago, when I decided to give up smoking, for example, I used excuses begone beliefs. It was encouraging for me to realize how much more difficult it was to smoke than not to smoke. The smoker part of me always had to have a pack of cigarettes and an ashtray within easy reach, had to carry matches or lighters, dispose of ashes, deal with smelly fingers and stained teeth, earn money to pay for this disgusting habit, be careful exhaling noxious fumes, cough up nicotine residue from my lungs, buy lighter fluids and flints, and on and on and on. The truth was that continuing to smoke was the real difficulty, and changing my habit involved one simple thing: not smoking. This is true for virtually all of your habits. The belief that they're going to be hard to change is only a belief. Making something difficult in your mind before you even undertake the effort is an excuse. Nothing in the world is difficult for those who set their mind to it, as an ancient Taoist master concluded. Excuse number 2. It's going to be risky. Again, this may seem like a good reason, but if you convince yourself that something involves more risk than you're capable of assuming or have the strength for, this is a poor excuse for not taking action. What is unquestionable here is your ability to choose your beliefs about the drawbacks of this endeavor. Over the years, countless people have thanked me for taking so many risks and speaking out about what I believe so fervently. I'm always taken aback by such expressions of gratitude. I've never assumed that I was being courageous by speaking my mind. Even if my opinions and statements were certain to be perceived as offensive by large numbers of people, the idea that being myself and also being willing to speak my own truth involved taking a chance never occurred to me. I don't believe you can ever be 100% certain that something will be risk-free. Holding back in silence out of fear of retribution or criticism could easily be the most hazardous behavior. Speaking from the heart doesn't always mean critical fallout. After all, about 99% of the time, the feedback I receive is positive and heartwarming. The fear involved in anticipating a risk simply serves to keep you from taking action. When you convince yourself that it's your job to avoid taking chances, you can continue your familiar habits. If you're accustomed to playing it safe by attempting to please everyone you encounter, then you're a victim of your own excuse-making. The point is that if you fear the opinions of others, or if you fear failure or success, then anything that you think or do will involve some risk. But if you're willing to live from your convictions and fulfill your destiny, then what others perceive as taking chances are simply the ways that you choose to elevate your life. Even if you do believe that changing the way you think will involve risk, so what? The peace you feel because you ignored the worry of a risk is far greater than staying stuck in a belief that is really only an excuse. As writer Logan Pearsall Smith once noted, quote, "What is more mortifying than to feel that you have missed the plum for want of courage to shake the tree," unquote. Excuse number 3, it will take a long time. Is this a valid reason or an excuse not to proceed? If you wish to elevate your life, it really doesn't matter how long it takes, does it? And this is particularly true when you're conscious that you live your life, every single bit of it, in the present moment and only in the present moment. All you ever get is now. Every thought occurs in the present moment, and every change has a defining moment. Often it takes something or someone outside of you to help you realize that. An entertaining psychiatrist named Dr. Murray Banks does just that with the following little exchange between himself and a woman who's decided not to return to school because she'd be too old when she's finished. Question, he asks her. How old would you be in 5 years if you got that degree by starting now, he asks her. 49, she replies. And how old will you be in 5 years if you don't go back to school? 49, she answers with a bewildered confusion of becoming conscious of making an excuse for not elevating her life. However long it took you to create any self-defeating habit, you did it all one day, one moment at a time. There's absolutely no proof that anything will take a long time, since even the idea of a long time is an illusion. There's only now. Make this awareness a part of your consciousness. The Tao Te Ching reinforces this in perhaps the most famous line in that masterful work. Quote, "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step," unquote. Elevate or move on in your life, not by thinking big and in long time periods, but with consciousness focused on the present moment. Excuse number 4. There will be family drama. After spending many years as a family therapist, I've seen how people often become stuck in their habituated modes of thinking because they fear the criticism that could result if they change. And I receive so many phone calls on my weekly radio show on hayhouseradio.com from individuals who insist on remaining stuck because of this excuse. When I encourage a shift in thinking, I regularly hear things like, "I'd love to try what you suggest, but it would just kill my parents," or "My family would disown me if I did that. It's just too big a price to pay." I've heard more than a few admit that if their spouse died, it would be an easier solution than making changes. Now let me be very clear here. I believe in family. I have 8 beautiful children, a mother in her 90s whom I adore, and 2 brothers whom I love dearly, and I treasure my immediate and extended families. However, and this is a crucial point, living a life of your own choosing involves the unquestionable willingness to endure the slings and arrows that could come your way when you respond to your inner knowing rather than to the opinions of your family. Samuel Butler was probably feeling something similar when, toward the end of his life in 1902, he wrote, "I believe more unhappiness comes from this source than from any other. I mean, the attempt to prolong family connection unduly and to make people hang together artificially who would never naturally do so," unquote. You don't belong to your immediate family. You're a member of the human family. You don't own your children, nor are you a possession of your parents. You're not obliged to fulfill the wishes or a destiny dictated by kin. It's important to consciously know that you're here to create your music and that you don't have to die with your music still in you. Granted, this can trigger some family drama, but then again, that might be just your excuse for not following your own path. It's been my experience that I earn far more respect than reproach from my family whenever I encourage myself to live the life I want. To that end, these types of excuses need to disappear. I can't disappoint my grandparents or my parents. Why should I be the only one rebelling and wanting to move out of town, or take up a new occupation, or marry outside of our faith, or whatever else may incur disapproval and censure from relatives? These are thoughts or memes based on fears that were originally internalized in childhood, when they seemed the only way to secure a place in your tribe. Yet, what were reasons to the child you were then need to be recognized as excuses by the adult you are today. Don't let fear of family dramas keep you from changing outmoded, unnecessary, and unwanted thought patterns. Excuse number 5, I don't deserve it. In Revolution from Within, a book of self-esteem, Gloria Steinem writes that self-esteem isn't everything, it's just that there's nothing without it. I believe that lack of self-esteem is the basis for the I don't deserve it excuse I hear in sentences such as these. Nothing seems to work for me. I try, but nothing ever comes my way. I must not be worthy of it. And other people can get ahead, but I guess I'm not good enough to succeed. These excuses are based on a belief in the validity of your unworthiness. It's as if a part of you wants to protect you from what's assumed to be the unbearable pain of feeling that maybe they're right, and I don't deserve it. If you ask that part of you why it's doing this, it will have good reasons. But those reasons are, in effect, lies, and functioning by their edict means that you're living a lie. You don't earn worthiness. You're equally as deserving of all that this glorious world offers as anyone else is. Believing that you're not good enough to have unlimited happiness, success, and health is a colossal fabrication that bears no resemblance to the truth of your life today. It keeps you discouraged with a well-intentioned excuse to protect you from taking action. But it isn't protecting you. It's preventing you from becoming conscious of your unquestionable worthiness. In the presence of now, this excuse has no place in your life. Excuse number 6, it's not my nature. The sentences cropping up in this category sound something like this. I've always been this way. I can't help it. I was born with these personality traits. I've never known any other way to think. And yep, it's my nature, so I'll just have to accept it. Earlier in this program, I explained my understanding of new research demonstrating that your genetic and mimetic heredity are capable of being altered. If you're willing to consciously endeavor to change the beliefs that support what you call your nature, you'll discover that it's not my nature excuse is now gone. I firmly believe that your intrinsic self is well equipped to help you fulfill your unique destiny. Just because you have no recollection of ever having been other than the way you are today, this isn't proof that your nature is unchangeable. To once again quote Henry David Thoreau, quote, "It is surprising how much room there is in nature if a man will follow his proper path," unquote. I take this to mean that nature itself will shift to accommodate you when you begin to know your unquestionable ability to elevate your life. Incorporate Thoreau's advice and begin to follow your own path. Recognize excuse logic that sounds like this. I've always been this way. It's just who I am. I'd like to change, but how can I change my own nature? It's all I've ever known, so I guess I'll just have to stay the way I am. Can you see how this kind of logic keeps you stuck in a lifelong thinking habit? The very fact that you've been a certain way throughout your life is a perfect reason for encouraging yourself with thoughts such as, I'm fed up with being frightened, shy, poor, unhappy, used by others, condescending, fat, or out of shape. It's all I've ever known, and it stems from the way I think and the beliefs I've come to accept as defining my nature. If this is my nature, then I'm going to change it, beginning right now. Now, these are notions that the philosopher Bertrand Russell could get behind. He wrote, quote, "If human nature were unchangeable, as ignorant people seem to suppose it to be, the situation would indeed be hopeless. What passes as human nature is at most 1/10 nature, the other 9/10 being nurture," unquote. So whatever you believe is your nature, allow it to be nurtured the way you'd like it to be, starting with excuses be gone. 9/10 of your nature has been learned and adopted as a habit, and you can coax those old habits down the stairs, one step at a time. Excuse number 7, I can't afford it. It's a rare day when I don't hear some variation of this excuse, including, I didn't go to college because it was too expensive, I haven't been able to travel because I never had the funds, and I couldn't get into the business I wanted because I had to stay where I was and earn money to pay the bills. I call this belief lame and a cop-out, yet there seems to be almost universal agreement for its existence. You originated in a world of abundance, which you unquestionably have the ability to access. Whenever you discourage yourself with thoughts that your financial situation is preventing anything from appearing, that's an excuse. If you instead decide to bring abundance awareness into your consciousness, you'll shift your thoughts from, I can't afford it, to, whatever I need in the form of assistance to guide me in the direction of my life is not only available, but it's on its way. You'll then consciously watch for the necessary funding to show up,
but you'll also be reminding yourself to believe that you have the ability to use abundance to elevate your life. Encourage yourself by realizing that you have the capacity to create a space within you that's filled with peace and joy, an inner island of contentment that has nothing to do with money. Practice gratitude for the essentials of life, which are yours to enjoy virtually free of charge. These include air, water, fire, the sun and the moon, the very ground you walk on, the continuous beating of your heart, the inhaling and exhaling of your lungs, your food digesting, your eyes and ears, and so on. Be utterly grateful for all that you have naturally, which is beyond the scope of what's affordable. As that endeavor strengthens, assess what you truly like to do, where you'd like to live, and what creature comforts you desire. When I made the decision to attend college after spending 4 years in the military, for instance, I knew in my heart that money wasn't going to be the thing that prevented me from reaching my goals. I understood the costs involved, and I didn't act on my fear of shortage or what I couldn't afford. I acted on my internal knowing that I indeed was going to attend the university. This knowing prompted me to investigate financial assistance from the government as a veteran, open a savings account designated for tuition and books, talk with the financial aid people at the university, and make alternative plans to attend community college if Plan A were not to materialize. I had a certainty inside of me that the "I can't afford it" reasoning is an excuse that many people who aren't considered wealthy employ as a means for exonerating themselves when they need a rationalization for why they're stuck where they are in life. Oscar Wilde made this wry observation in 1891. There's only one class in the community that thinks more about money than the rich, and that is the poor. The poor can think of nothing else, unquote. I'd add that such thinking includes lamenting the fact that they'll never have money. I advise tossing out this meme and instead rewiring thoughts to connect with what's intended to manifest, regardless of your current financial status. Whatever you feel is your dharma, and no matter how hard that calling seems to be pulling you, if you maintain the belief that you can't manage to pull it off, I can assure you that you're right. To paraphrase Henry Ford, whether you believe you can afford to do a thing or not, you're right. Excuse number 8, no one will help me. This excuse really saddens me because there's no truth in it whatsoever. The fact is that the world is filled with people who would jump at a chance to help you with whatever you'd like to create. But if you hold on to a false notion that no one will be there to help you, your experiences will match that belief. If you spent way too much of your life overweight, seriously addicted, lost in poverty, or what have you, then you need to realize that the ball is in your court. No more excuses. Once that belief begins changing, you'll see help arriving. But the initial movement is completely in your thoughts. It begins with this new belief, I can access help. Begin encouraging yourself with affirmations that support and elevate your beliefs, such as, I have the capacity to create by myself if necessary. I know the right people to help me are here at the right time, and the world is full of people who would love to assist me. These will help to align you with the source of energy that's unquestionably available to your intuitive self. Elevate your confidence further with this journal entry made in November of 1843 by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Quote, if I have lost confidence in myself, I have the universe against me. Unquote. You are the universe. You originated from the invisible world of spirit. When you doubt yourself, you doubt the universal intelligence that you are, and it seems there's no one to help you. As an example from my own life, I repeat this thought from A Course in Miracles when I'm about to give a speech. Quote, if you knew who walked beside you at all times on this path that you have chosen, you could never experience fear or doubt again. Unquote. As I walk to the microphone podium, I remember that I'm an instrument for the words and ideas. My confidence trusts the wisdom that created me. In other words, I know that I am never alone. There's no one to help me becomes an invalid excuse. I affirm that all that is needed or required will be there, and I consciously encourage myself with this unquestionable belief. And help seems to come from all directions. The money I need somehow shows up, the right people emerge, and circumstances occur that are unexpectedly helpful, almost as if some synchronistic force steps in and bewilders me with the beauty of it all. I'm encouraged by my unquestionable power to elevate myself in any situation. Excuse number 9. It has never happened before. Be not the slave of your own past. This is what my literary soulmate Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote in his journal. Just because you've always been a certain way, this isn't a rational explanation for your present state of affairs. In fact, it's an excuse attempting to explain away what you feel are shortcomings. The past is a trail you leave behind, much like the wake of a speedboat. That is, it's a vanishing trail temporarily showing you where you were. The wake of a boat doesn't affect its course. Obviously it can't, since it's only a trail behind the boat. So consider this image when you exclaim that your past is the reason you aren't moving forward. The logic of "it's never happened before," or its equally debilitating corollary, "it's always been that way for me," stems from these beliefs. My past is over, and what's over can't be changed. What happened before will happen again, so I'm being guided today by what can't be changed. Therefore, it's impossible for me to change. It's over for me. What I want has never happened before, and that means it will never happen again. Crazy logic. This is what happens when you live in the wake or the trail you've left behind, convinced that your past is the reason why you can't change. You hang on to it to excuse yourself from thinking differently. Consciously choose a new set of affirmations that encourage you to believe in your ability to elevate your life above past levels. Try this. I can accomplish anything I put my mind to here in the present moment. My past has no bearing on what I can and will create. If it has never happened before, that is all the more reason for me to make it happen now. I will cease being a slave to my past. Inventory the mental excuses you have for avoiding risk, failure, criticism, ridicule, or the negative opinions of others. See how you're creating them as the formation of your current excuse memes. Yes, I said memes. Those ideas placed in your head from mimicking the ideas of others until they became a set of mind viruses. When they're put to the 7-part excuses be gone paradigm in part 3 of this program, they'll simply crumble right before your eyes because they have no substance. I doubt this point could be better summarized than in the last lines of Carl Sandburg's poem, Prairie. Quote, I tell you the past is a bucket of ashes. I tell you yesterday is a wind gone down, a sun dropped in the west. I tell you there is nothing in the world, only an ocean of tomorrows, a sky of tomorrows. End quote. Give up hanging on to that bucket of ashes. Recently, I spent an afternoon swimming with the dolphins in the Mexican Riviera. I'd never done such a thing in all of my 68 years, but rather than telling myself that I couldn't undertake such an outing because it's never happened before, I reversed the logic and instead thought, since I've never done this before, I want to add this to my repertoire and have this unique experience right now. And it was sensational. Adopt this kind of thinking regarding everything you've never done before. Open up to vistas that bring you to a new way of being where you create wealth, health, and happiness in the present moment. Excuse number 10. I'm not strong enough. The I'm not strong enough excuse unquestionably keeps you locked into a habituated way of thinking. Years spent believing in your weaknesses actually strengthens the belief that you aren't an emotionally, spiritually, or physically capable individual. It only takes a little bit of criticism to discourage you and activate this belief, I'm not a strong person, so I'll resort to my true self, who is weak. The idea that you aren't tough enough to hold a certain job, or stand up to a bully or victimizer, or take care of yourself, or face life alone, or travel by yourself are all mind viruses that are ready excuses when life gets tough. This is true on a collective level as well. I spent a couple of years teaching American history with a special interest in colonial America. I was always intrigued by how the United States broke free from the small island on the other side of the ocean that had ruled it with an iron fist for so many years. The message that the British had always sent was, we are strong, and you, fledgling wannabes, are weak. The result was a kind of servitude that had kept the colonists in excuse mode but was ultimately brought to a halt once and for all. The transformation required a paradigm shift, which ultimately resulted in new thinking habits. It began with that great assortment of founding fathers from north to south who challenged the mind virus that they were weak and the British were strong. When enough of these courageous leaders shared their beliefs about American might, the new meme began to replicate, infiltrate, and spread throughout the 13 colonies. In that vein, here's a portion of a speech delivered by Patrick Henry before the Second Revolutionary Convention of Virginia in 1775. Quote, we are not weak. If we make a proper use of those means which the God of nature has placed in our power, the battle, sir, is not to the strong alone, it is to the vigilant, the active, the brave. Unquote. Shift out of the mental belief that you're too weak. Become vigilant and active and demonstrate a new kind of bravery. Affirm that you're breaking free of thinking habits that have convinced you you're not a strong person. Here are some affirmation suggestions for you. I shall never see myself as lacking in strength again. What you think of me is none of my business. My strength is my connection to Source. It does not know weakness. Become conscious of the fact that seeing this belief as an excuse illuminates its weakness, but it also strengthens your ability to encourage yourself. You possess all the fortitude of character, mind, and body to live at the highest levels of happiness, health, and prosperity. Let these words of Mohandas Gandhi inspire you. Quote, strength does not come from physical capacity. It comes from an indomitable will. Unquote. Excuse number 11. I'm not smart enough. Your vast intelligence isn't measurable by an IQ test, nor is it susceptible to the analysis of school transcripts. Your ideas or beliefs about what you'd like to be, accomplish, or attract are evidence of your genius. If you're capable of conceiving it, then the act of visual conception combined with your passion for manifesting your idea into reality is all you need to activate your genius. If you think that it's impossible to categorize yourself as a genius, I emphatically ask, why not? You originated in the same infinite field of intention as everyone else who's ever lived. Your mind is a component of the mind of God or the universal Tao, so how could it be other than the brilliance of the Creator? Were you not created out of this vast sea of invisible intelligence? Are your ideas somehow inferior or incapable of being transformed into this material world? Even as a part of you hangs on to the I'm not smart enough excuse, there's a part of you that recognizes this truth. When you state, quote, I've never been smart enough, unquote, you're really saying, I've bought into a definition of intelligence that's measured by what family members or educators provided me with earlier in my life. You can provide yourself with encouraging input instead of the discouraging messages from your past by knowing that intelligence can never be measured, nor can it in any way be limited. So if you're willing to put your passion and perseverance into your ideas, you'll meet the genius part of you. Even if you subscribe to the idea that this excuse is warranted because your brain is somehow not up to par, consider the conclusion that Sharon Begley offers in her book, Train Your Mind, Change Your Brain. Here's what she says about the power of the brain, your brain, to change, not through prescription drugs, but through the will. Quote, the conscious act of thinking about one's thoughts in a different way changes the very brain circuits that do the thinking, unquote. And, quote, the ability of thought and attention to physically alter the brain echoes one of Buddhism's more remarkable hypotheses, that will is a real physical force that can change the brain, unquote. So even if you want to hang on to the excuse that your brain is chemically deficient, you have within you the power to change its material makeup. You can rearrange your old thinking system so that it conforms with the genius model. Why not think that the ideas in your head are byproducts of your genius instead of a limited intelligence? Let what Oscar Wilde is said to have remarked to a New York City customs official encourage you. When asked if he had anything to declare, he responded, quote, I have nothing to declare but my genius, unquote. And in many ways, he was absolutely correct. When you trust in yourself, you trust in the very wisdom that created you. Make a conscious effort not to second-guess that originating wisdom. Like Oscar Wilde, have only your genius to declare. Trust your elevated thoughts, especially those that stir up passion, and then act on them as if they were unquestionable. Excuse number 12, I'm too old, or I'm not old enough. The age of your body can seem to be quite an obstacle on the road to changing long-held thinking habits, particularly since you received an extensive list of memes concerning age very early on. Depending on where you grew up, you heard statements such as, you can't ride your bicycle until you're 7. You can't sleep over until you're 10. You can't drive a car until you're 16. And you can't have sex until you're married. Then at some point you discovered that you went from being not old enough to being too old. Then you started to hear, you can't get a new job after age 35. You can't change occupations because you're past your prime. Or you can't fall in love again at your age. Or it's too late to write the book or compose the symphony you've always dreamed about. And of course, the old saw, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And all of these memes became your reality. The age excuse comes from an inclination to identify yourself with the number of trips you've made around the sun rather than from the unlimited side of you that lives independent of the age of your body. Part of you has an ageless mind and is quite oblivious to the physical aging process, and it's available to you if you'll just encourage it with conscious invitations to participate in your life. As a young child, you had daydreams about what you might invent or draw or write or design. Mind viruses came your way routinely, which made age your reality. Wait until you're bigger to do those kinds of things seemed to be a never-ending pronouncement, all too quickly turning into, you're too old, act your age, it's too late. Somewhere between the two, your private destiny wasn't elevated to a primary position in your life. You are the age you are, period. Yet those thoughts swirling around inside and outside of your head are ageless. They have no form, no boundaries, no beginnings, no endings. When you speak of age, you speak of your body, this finite thing that houses your invisible essence. This excuse is all about your physical self, and it is unquestionably influenced by your mind. You're the perfect age right here in this moment, and your body can be no other age than what it is. Identify yourself in what Lao Tzu calls the subtle realm, or the invisible domain of spirit, with thoughts like these. I am ageless, and I can train my body to work with me in achieving anything I can conceive of in my mind. There's nothing about my age today that prohibits me from fulfilling my dreams. My mind is free, and I can train it to do my bidding rather than acquiescing to an excuse pattern. I've had two very persuasive callings in my life. One occurred when I knew I'd be pursuing a college education regardless of being the oldest freshman on campus. Age was of no consequence to me. In fact, the 8 years I spent as a student on several college campuses to earn my 3 academic degrees were accomplished in part because I was so unconcerned about my age. I was living my passion, and everything else took a back seat to that vision. My second huge calling came at the age of 65 years and 1 day. Compelled to detach myself from worldly possessions accumulated over many decades, I disposed of clothes, furniture, books, records, awards, photographs, and memorabilia of all descriptions. Studying and living the Tao Te Ching, I wrote an essay on each of the 81 verses in a book titled Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. That I might be too old simply never occurred to me. As I look back on my life, I realize that I've made many smaller decisions where I refused to consider age as a factor. At the age of 42, I decided to become a long-distance runner and ran the original Greek marathon. At the age of 17, I decided to write my first novel, and at the age of 9, I faked my age to get a paper route. 10 was the required age. At the age of 68, I can't conceive of thinking that I'm too old to do what I love. Without that excuse, I continue to live by activating my particular dharma, or destiny. In fact, I just completed a brand new career undertaking as an actor and filmmaker at the tender age of 68. I encourage you to view the movie called The Shift, and tell me. Write to me and tell me if you think I'm too old for such a project. Excuse number 13. The rules won't let me. Perhaps the most famous of Henry David Thoreau's observation is this one from the conclusion of Walden. Quote, if a man does not keep pace with his companions, perhaps it is because he hears a different drummer. Unquote. Thoreau was referring to the unlikelihood of being able to always march to the same beat as everyone else. There are times in your life when you have to listen to the rhythm of rules that are beating within you, and only you, instead. But perhaps you've latched onto a belief that the rules of society are so sacrosanct that bending them would be crossing a line that you or anyone should never cross. The words that follow the above sentence in Walden are even more compelling for living an excuses-begone life. Quote, let him step to the music which he hears, however measured or far away. Unquote. I'm not making a case for being a lawbreaker just for the sake of nonconformity. I am encouraging you to give up habituated behavior that demands following the rules and obeying laws when this keeps you from fulfilling your destiny. Bertrand Russell observed that, quote, from childhood upward, everything is done to make the minds of men and women conventional and sterile, unquote. This includes many of the edicts, both written and spoken, that you've been taught to observe as you move through life. Many of these rules are simply the shoulds. You should do things the way we've always done things in this family. You should keep quiet and do as you're told. You should fit in and take the courses that the school offers. You should take the advice of authorities rather than have a different opinion. You should want to continue living near family instead of moving across or out of the country, and so on. All of these shoulds are designed to keep you from hearing a certain drumbeat, which, if further ignored, may lead to disastrous results. Thoughtless obedience to rules and laws is both dangerous to society as a whole and an impenetrable obstacle in the way of your health and happiness. You see, your subconscious mind may be so programmed that you allow all of these memes or mind viruses to dictate your opinions in life. If you recognize that you're a spokesperson for always obeying rules and laws and doing as you're told, you also need to recognize that you pass on mind viruses to others similar to the ones that are curtailing your own life. Some of the most heinous acts in human history have been performed under the umbrella of the law and the rules, and many beliefs and opinions are merely excuses defended as rules or laws. Listen to your own heart and obey whatever is consistent with what you know to be the highest law of all. Subscribe to edicts that encourage you and others to be all that you're capable of becoming without interfering in any way with anyone else's God-given rights. In this excuses-begone attitude, you'll never be limited by laws, rules, or shoulds. As the 18th verse of the Tao Te Ching states, quote, "When the greatness of the Tao, or God, is present, action arises from one's own heart. When the greatness of the Tao, or God, is absent, action comes from the rules of kindness and justice. Let the greatness of the Tao live in your heart and encourage you to act from that elevated place." Excuse number 14. It's too big. The "it's too big" excuse is so big that it seems to plop on top of people and totally immobilize them. Perhaps surprisingly, this belief only needs to be reversed. If you believe that people are successful because they think big, for instance, I'm here to tell you that success demands small thinking. Bring this realization into your consciousness, and you will have accessed the ability to think small and act on what only once seemed to be big issues. Some of these include being overweight, battling an addiction to legal or illegal substances, having an unwanted self-image, earning your PhD, building your new house, getting out of debt, fixing your relationship with your mother, or becoming more self-reliant. Verse 63 of the Tao clearly and gently explains what I'm talking about. Quote, "Take on difficulties while they are still easy. Do great things while they are still small. The sage does not attempt anything very big, and thus achieves greatness." Unquote. These words may appear to be paradoxical, but they're the unquestionable response to this particular excuse. As I was writing this in the book, there was a 12-story structure being erected next door to my condo building. Admittedly, there had to be some big thinking on the part of those who imagined and designed this project. However, the actual creation of this beautiful new edifice is being accomplished in terms of what can be done right here, right now. One step, one brick, and one shovelful of dirt at a time. What a great metaphor to touch base with when you feel overwhelmed by the sheer scope of something. You cannot lose 50 pounds, or quit smoking in a single day, or get your PhD tomorrow, or eliminate all debt from your life forever. Such goals are too big when approached that way, and this makes it too easy to fall back into habituated ways. The excuses begone method invites you to challenge your thought patterns and encourage your own success. So acknowledge that you can't get the humongous things done today, but you can take that first step. While you can't receive your PhD today, you can register for a course that begins next week, and that's all you can do regarding that lofty goal for now. Think small and accomplish what you can in the here and now. You can't quit drinking alcohol or smoking cigarettes for the next 10 years, but you can refuse to give in to your addictions today, or even smaller, in this moment. That you can do. And that is precisely how all habituated thinking habits get changed, by thinking and acting small in the now moment, and living the only way that anyone really does live, 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day at a time. With this new consciousness, you can begin thinking in terms that encourage you to eliminate excuses and elevate success. Excuse number 15. I don't have the energy. Not having the vitality to fulfill your life purpose is part of a learned response. I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I'm worn out, and I'm too weary are just a few varieties of mind viruses that have infected you, consciously or unconsciously. They're generally an unintended excuse as opposed to a legitimate explanation for not doing the things you want to do. Accept the belief that you're lacking the energy to make significant changes in your life, and you latch onto a flimsy, albeit very effective, strategy for maintaining some pretty slovenly habits. You can hang on to any old and comfortable behavior pattern by using the tiredness excuse. I'd love to get into shape, but I'm simply too exhausted to do what's required. Or, I want to become qualified for that new position, but I'm just too fatigued to go to school at night. The belief in your non-energy becomes self-fulfilling until you have to rest again, because coming up with excuses is a very tiring practice. The low-energy excuse is simply what I've seen myself and many others employ when we don't know how to overcome our own inertia, and I found that when we really put it to the test, it doesn't hold up. I've seen an absence of energy turn into an avalanche of high energy in just an instant. When my children used to complain about being bored or too tired to move, for instance, all it took was a suggestion that we visit the water park or go shopping for a new bicycle or do anything that they perceived to be fun, and they'd miraculously convert from weary to excited in a split second. And so it goes with all of us. We use the "I don't have the energy" excuse as a reason to hold on to an inert and pathetic way of being. The antidote to this is to find a way to inject energetic thoughts into your everyday thinking. One of John F. Kennedy's biographers, Arthur M. Schlesinger, Jr., quoted the former president as saying, quote, "I suppose if you had to choose just one quality to have, that would be it, vitality," unquote. Vitality isn't simply the amount of high-energy atoms you have swirling around inside of you. I consider it a way of thinking. You can learn to overcome the ennui of low-energy thinking and replace it with a way of processing the world that serves you in a positive, life-fulfilling way. Low energy is by and large not a problem of body chemistry. It's a function of a long history of habituated thinking that needs excuses to stay the same. You can learn to practice more satisfying and vibrant thinking that will elevate your enthusiasm and ultimately produce an energetic lifestyle filled with purpose, no matter what your chronological age. You have the power to use your thoughts to elevate yourself to new levels of success, happiness, and health. Excuses begone thinking encourages you to spend your daily moments in aliveness, free of the old tiredness routine. Refuse to cater to low-energy mental activity. Be determined to unquestionably place your thoughts not on what you can't do, but on what you intend to create. Stay in this mindset, and you'll never want to use the low-energy excuse again. Maintain your high-energy consciousness for what you want to accomplish, and watch it filter down to everyone you communicate with. High energy is infectious, and it originates with vital thinking that replaces these old mind viruses. Excuse number 16. It's my personal family history. You've always had a place in your family, and regardless of your opinion about it, there's nothing you can do to change that. If you were the youngest and always ordered around, that's simply the condition of your early life. The fact is that your birth order, being an only, oldest, or middle child, or any other familial sequencing, including being part of a blended family, having divorced or single parents, being adopted, having alcoholic parents, being of a low socioeconomic status, being racially mixed, or any of an endless combination of factors in your situation, it's all in the past and it's all over. Your relatives did what they did, given the circumstances of their life. Acknowledge this, and then move into the present moments of life. Look at your family history as a blessing. Yeah, a blessing. It's precisely what you had to go through to arrive where you are today. The manner in which you were treated or even mistreated provided you with an opportunity to be a stronger, more self-reliant person. Early experiences aren't meant to be hidden behind when life isn't working out the way you want it to. They aren't reasons for staying stuck. But the family history excuse has a huge following, so you have lots of company if you're using it to explain to yourself and others why you aren't who or what you want to be today. The divorce that took place when you were a young child may have taught you many important life lessons, but more likely, you caught the cultural mind virus that goes something like this. Coming from a broken family is a traumatic experience that causes irreparable damage to children. A part of you believes and promotes this meme because it seems easier than exploring the pain that leads to a healthier and stronger mindset. This part of you probably thinks that it's protecting you from that extremely painful childhood experience. Thus, you readily believe chances are almost zero that I'll have a happy relationship after seeing how miserably my parents failed at their own marriage. You can change all of this by reminding yourself that you absolutely have the power to elevate your attitude and beliefs. Consciously take time to reimagine the family experiences you had in the early years of your life, regardless of how traumatic or troublesome they were at the time. You didn't have the unquestionable ability as a child to make peace with them, but you do now. Be in a state of appreciation and gratitude for the parts of you that survived and still want to grow. Encourage them by refusing to settle for the easy out of excuses. For example, the years I spent in foster homes gave me life experiences that helped me to teach self-reliance to millions of people. Watching my stepfather drink himself to death, along with living with the effects that alcoholism has on a family, was, and still is, a great lesson that keeps me on the path of sobriety today. The presence of scarcity and food shortages as a child gave me an appreciation for all that has come to me, and I can now assure the poverty-conscious part of me that was then, and this is now. Excuses Be Gone encourages you to make peace with everything that transpired in your life, including the painful experiences of abuse, abandonment, and even disrespect. By hanging on to these lifelong self-defeating thinking habits, you do yourself the following major disservices. First, you get weaker and sicker. Your biography can become your biology. That is, by hanging on to old hurts or remembrances, you keep yourself in a place of attracting disease into your body. All of that anger, hatred, and anxiety is a vibrational match to the presence of serious illness. It's the law of attraction at work. If you think about what's missing or what you disliked about your early life, the universe will offer experiences that match what you're thinking. More of what was missing and what you disliked will continue to flow into your life in the form of disease. And secondly, you remain stuck in the past. If you can't elevate the thoughts about your past that are causing you to remain unhappy, unsuccessful, and unhealthy, you stay stuck where you are. Keeping unfortunate memories from the past alive with remnants of the originating anger, hate, and sadness becomes a habituated way of processing life. For example, if you hated how your father didn't pay enough attention to you and you use this to explain your adult self-consciousness, you're stuck in that long-held belief pattern. You have the unquestionable ability today to elevate your consciousness, to explore ways to relieve self-consciousness and attract people you want to be with, rather than continuing to explain to yourself that you can't attract those people because your father didn't pay enough attention to you. Remember, your life is happening now, in this present moment. Excuse number 17. I'm too busy. Prior to creating this excuse catalog that I'm now recording, I invited visitors to my website to email me their excuses for not living at the highest levels. In essence, I was interested in the excuses they have used in their lives. Quote, I'm too busy, unquote, easily topped the list. If you're overextended, know that you've chosen to be in this position. All of the activities of your life, including those that take up huge portions of your time, are simply the result of the choices you make. If your family responsibilities are problematic, you've opted to prioritize your life in this way. If your calendar is crammed, you've decided to live with a full schedule. If there are way too many small details that only you can handle, then this again is the choice you've made. Surely, one of the major purposes of life is to be happy. If you're using the excuse that you're too busy to be happy, you've made a choice to be busy, and in the process, you've copped out on living your life on purpose. If you substituted being busy for actively and happily fulfilling your destiny, you need to re-examine your priorities. Here is my mentor, Henry David Thoreau, on unexamined priorities. Quote, most men or women are engaged in businesses the greater part of their lives because the soul abhors a vacuum, and they have not discovered any continuous employment for man's nobler faculties. Unquote. Don't let your soul languish in an unfilled vacuum. Instead, begin to examine just how you prioritize your life. All the details that occupy it keep you from a destiny that you're aware wants your attention. Contemplate these encouraging ideas to encounter the I'm too busy excuse. First, I know that I'm not a bad parent if I don't arrange my life to be available to show for the children every day until they're adults. Secondly, I'm allowed to say no to requests that keep me from having time to pursue my life purpose. Third, there's no such thing as a place for everything and everything in its place. 4, there's no right way to do anything. And 5, I can have it my way because there are no absolute universal rules. It isn't my purpose to delineate all of the ways in which you can unload this excuse category. Practicing, delegating, getting others to help out, and taking time for yourself are all possibilities as well. Thoreau is right in that there are nobler faculties you need to pay attention to, in addition to all of those other details that occupy your life. If you fear the part of your soul that's calling you to a higher place, then you'll probably continue to haul out this particular excuse. Change this pattern by never saying or implying that you're too busy. Just drop it and replace it with the following affirmation. I intend to take time for myself to live the life that I came here to live, and to do it without ignoring my responsibilities as a parent, a spouse, or employee. I learned this valuable technique from the great Vietnamese spiritual bodhisattva Thich Nhat Hanh in his book, Peace is Every Step. Recite these 2 lines anytime you can steal a few minutes from your daily schedule. Quote, breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I smile. Unquote. As Hanh writes, quote, breathing in, I calm my body. Reciting this line is like drinking a glass of cool lemonade on a hot day. You can feel the coolness permeate your body. Breathing out, I smile. Wearing a smile on your face is a sign that you are a master of yourself. Unquote. This simple exercise helps you to prioritize your life with a sense of peace. Then you can look at precisely what it is you need to do in order to discard the busyness excuse. There's a wonderful cartoon posted on the bulletin board at the yoga studio in Lahaina, Maui, that I frequent, that summarizes the importance of saying "be gone" to this popular excuse. Underneath the depiction of a doctor talking to an overweight patient, the caption reads, quote, what fits your busy schedule better, exercising 1 hour a day or being dead 24 hours a day? Unquote. That sums up my approach to this particular excuse. Practice elevating your thoughts every day, no matter how busy and important you are. Rather than insisting that you're too busy to exercise, for example, think, I exercise because I'm way too busy to take time for being sick. Excuse number 18, I'm too scared. Again, turning to my email correspondence, here's what else they've told me. Quote, I've always been afraid of being alone. I'm scared of failing, and I've been this way since I was a child. It's a scary world, and someone could hurt me. I'm afraid something bad will happen to me or my family. I'm afraid that someone will yell at me, and I can't handle criticism. And I'm scared about being poor or losing my job and not being able to get another one. Clearly, fear is a biggie in the excuse catalog. A way out of the I'm too scared thought pattern is offered in A Course in Miracles. I have a special love for this weighty tome that tells us that there are only 2 emotions we can experience, love and fear. Anything that is love cannot be fear, and anything that is fear cannot be love. If we can find our way to stay in a space of love, particularly for ourselves, then fear is an impossibility. I believe that fear is a mind virus that insists that you're either a success or a failure, and it's passed from one mind to another until it becomes a habit from an early age. You're taught to feel, if I don't succeed at everything I attempt, then I'm a failure as a person, and I'm scared to death of having to live with such an awful label. This virus is passed on to you from other minds who bought into the same logic, and it keeps on replicating, infiltrating, and spreading until it becomes a habitual way of responding. You think fearful thoughts, and then you use those same thoughts to explain the deficiencies of your life. You act as if they're really true, when in fact they're nothing more than excuses. Franklin D. Roosevelt's famous refrain from his first inaugural address, quote, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, unquote, was crafted from Thoreau, and his observation that, quote, nothing is so much to be feared as fear, unquote. These Tao men had it right. There really is nothing to be afraid of. When you begin applying the excuses be gone paradigm, you'll find in part 3 of this program, neither this nor any of the excuses in this chapter will hold up. Here's a personal example. In the practice of Bikram Yoga, which is a regular part of my life, there are 2 postures that require the practitioner to bend all the way over backward and hold the posture for a period of 30 seconds or so. When I first started this practice, I'd feel fear welling up in me as I attempted to grab my heels from a kneeling position. I remember saying to my instructor, quote, I just can't bend over backward. I feel as if I'm out of control. In fact, I've never even been able to do a backward dive into a swimming pool in my entire life, unquote. I had a great meme going here which told me, going backwards is scary. You'll lose control. You won't be able to see where you're going. You could fall. You could really hurt yourself, and so forth. Each of these explanations was an excuse that kept me from mastering these new poses. My fear was rooted in my absence of trust in myself based on a lifetime of mind viruses. When I shifted my mind from fear to love, however, a remarkable thing happened that freed me from the chains of that habituated thinking. I saw myself cradled in the arms of a loving presence. I then said something to myself that I'd never uttered before. Wayne, you can do these 2 exercises. You are a divine piece of the all-knowing intelligence. First, love yourself and trust in this wisdom, and then let go and let God. By moving to love, fear was impossible, and 60-plus years of excuse-making went out the window. Today I enjoy demonstrating both the camel and fixed firm postures for new students. Out of all 26 postures, these 2 give me the greatest sense of joy and accomplishment. As the saying goes, fear knocked on the door, love answered, and no one was there. Here's a recap for each of the 18 most commonly used excuses that I've delineated here. The affirmations will assist you in making a conscious effort to encourage yourself to elevate your beliefs unquestionably. Going back now, here's number 1. It will be difficult. Affirmation. I have the ability to accomplish any task I set my mind to with ease and comfort. Number 2. It's going to be risky. Affirmation. Being myself involves no risk. It is my ultimate truth, and I live it fearlessly. Number 3. It will take a long time. Affirmation. I have infinite patience when it comes to fulfilling my destiny. Number 4. There will be family drama. Affirmation. I would rather be loathed for who I am than loved for who I am not. Number 5. I don't deserve it. Affirmation. I am a divine creation, a piece of God, therefore I cannot be undeserving. Number 6. It's not my nature. Affirmation. My essential nature is perfect and faultless. It is to this nature that I return. Number 7. I can't afford it. Affirmation. I am connected to an unlimited source of abundance. Number 8. No one will help me. Affirmation. The right circumstances and the right people are already here and will show up on time. Number 9. It has never happened before. Affirmation. I am willing to attract all that I desire, beginning here and now. Number 10. I'm not strong enough. Affirmation. I have access to unlimited assistance. My strength comes from my connection to my source of being. Number 11. I'm not smart enough. Affirmation. I am a creation of the divine mind. All is perfect, and I am a genius in my own right. Number 12. I'm too old or not old enough. Affirmation. I am an infinite being. The age of my body has no bearing on what I do or who I am. Number 13. The rules won't let me. Affirmation. I live my life according to divine rules. Number 14. It's too big. Affirmation. I think only about what I can do now. By thinking small, I accomplish great things. Number 15. I don't have the energy. Affirmation. I feel passionately about my life, and this passion fills me with excitement and energy. Number 16. It's my personal family history. Affirmation. I live in the present moment by being grateful for all of my life experiences as a child. Number 17. I'm too busy. Affirmation. As I unclutter my life, I free myself to answer the callings of my soul. Number 18. I'm too scared. Affirmation. I can accomplish anything I put my mind to because I know that I am never alone. This concludes part 1. You've identified 18 of the most common excuses and have been introduced to reasons for removing habituated thoughts that have been holding you back from living life at the highest levels of success, happiness, and health. Now in part 2, you'll find the 7 principles that lead to a lifetime of no excuses. Part 2. The Key Excuses Begone Principles. Quote, every mind must know the whole lesson for itself, must go over the whole ground. What it does not see, what it does not live, it will not know. Unquote. That's from Ralph Waldo Emerson. Introduction to Part 2. Each chapter in Part 2 illustrates one of the 7 principles of excuses begone that I've personally explored and applied to my own life. Yet I'm leaving out any remnants of my scholarly research persona and instead sharing my unbridled enthusiasm about what it feels like to live in this new way. While I'll share my discoveries with you, it's my hope that you'll share my excitement through your own experience. I've included exercises at the end of each chapter that will help you to put these life-changing principles into practice. Chapter 4. The first principle, awareness. Quote, thinking without awareness is the main dilemma of human existence, unquote. Eckhart Tolle. And, quote, it's the awareness of how you are stuck that makes you recover, unquote. That's from Fritz Perls. Lifelong, set-in-stone thinking keeps you stuck, often without your even realizing that you're stuck. Since this type of mental activity can't lead you in a new direction, becoming aware must be the first step to getting rid of your excuses forever. Cultivating awareness is indeed the preliminary activity in the eye-opening experience of meeting your authentic self. Living your life oblivious to your thinking patterns and beliefs day after day, year after year, is a habit that encourages and elevates your ego or the false self. Eckhart Tolle states that awareness and ego cannot coexist, because awareness encourages and elevates your authentic self to be the center of your life experience. Although the false and authentic selves are mutually exclusive, I believe that knowledge of both is valuable. The way I see it, if you're going to practice an excuses-begone life, your primary relationship needs to be 100% with your authentic self. Who you truly are originates in a formless, invisible world. Scientists acknowledge that all particles, including you, emerge from an energy field of no-thingness. It's spirit that gives life, and it's to spirit that all life returns. There's very little room for ego here, since it clings to the false belief that you are your possessions and achievements. Becoming mindful of your true essence leads to awareness of your magnificence, your divinity, and your unique power to create for yourself whatever you feel is your destiny here on this planet, beyond any and all excuses. When awareness is your reality, you don't need to explain your shortcomings or missed opportunities. Instead, you transcend the pull of ego and move into a totally new dimension of higher consciousness. To put it simply and bluntly, if you don't realize that you no longer have to be stuck in your old thinking habits, then the habits will prevail and persist. This chapter introduces you to what awareness of the elevated experience of life actually feels like. From excuses to awareness. Breaking old habits requires noticing that you're creating impediments in your life, and that these impediments have become excuses for so-called limitations. For example, if you're averse to risk-taking and tend to choose the safe or the easy path, this has caused you to erect mental barriers. Such barriers are what I'm calling excuses, and they give you a way out. So when it's time to try something new, or to take a step that might result in failing, becoming the butt of criticism, or losing a contest or competition, or anything at all that puts you on the path toward becoming a stronger and a more self-reliant person, you come up with the same old excuse and avoid the risk. This is all an exercise that starts and ends in your mind. It's habituated thinking you rationalize by saying that it was inherited or foisted on you by well-meaning, albeit cautious, parents. Simply being cognizant of your excuse-making will open you up to vast arenas of new possibilities. You can begin this process by paying attention to the false part of yourself that believes in limitations. Simply observe the thoughts in your mind and the feelings in your body and note when they don't resonate with your authentic self. Yet you don't have to change or fix those thoughts and feelings. By becoming aware of your true being, you only need to pay uncritical attention to the ego self, and it will recede gradually and naturally in the light of your awareness. Remember, you're not just the temporary shell that you call your body. You're a divine essence who is limitless, formless, and infinite. When you notice your ego's chatter, you discover the ability to overcome long-established habits, and you begin to see all that you've been blinded by in excuse-making. Awareness leads you to your highest self. Ego leads you to your earthbound self. When you let the divine grow within you, awareness will be what you bring to all aspects of your life. As a Hindu devotee was once told, quote, the blossom vanishes of itself as the fruit grows. So too will the lower self vanish as the divine grows within you, unquote. Letting the divine grow within you involves sincerity, service to others, kindness, and reverence for all of life. Endeavoring to become aware encourages authentic thoughts to grow and appear in your inner world, and so will your lower self vanish as the divine grows within you. Let me share with you how awareness has been such a boon for me personally as I've changed some long-held thinking habits. In the opening chapters of this book, I describe two big excuses, genetic and mimetic. that many of us use to explain away what appears to be our failure to change the habits that plague us. As I read The Biology of Belief, the phrase perception controls genes kept attracting me. It triggered something in me that I hadn't considered before, the idea that the way I think about and perceive my world can overcome my DNA and my genetic inheritance. This means that I can rewire my internal circuitry and process physical or health problems from an entirely new perspective. If I were to stay unaware of my built-in ability to influence my genetic programming, I'd be stuck believing that those things were outside of my control. So I've become increasingly aware that my mind has power over my environment, which means that when my body is off track, it's because my beliefs are off track. All my life I've heard that the one thing you can't change is your DNA, and I've always nodded in agreement. With my current awareness of the power of perception, however, a whole new world has opened up for me. For example, I have a history of infection and discomfort in my chest and bronchial area, and I've tended to feel that this is an area of weakness to be concerned about. A minor sore throat appears, which proceeds to some coughing and then produces green phlegm, followed by some difficulty breathing, and I head out to purchase some antibiotics and go through the same old process until the infection and discomfort ultimately disappear. Yet doing the research for this book, part of which involves putting into practice what I'm learning and writing about, I've moved into a new mental state. I now encourage myself to apply awareness rather than my old routine, and I seem to skip over those days of discomfort and the annoying antibiotics. In fact, I'm approaching everything about my body with a new awareness. Rather than first reverting to ways I've used in the past to process early signs of a physical malady, these days I shift to a level that allows me to mentally suspend my ego and even my body. Then I tell myself something along these lines. My perceptions or beliefs control my environment, my body, which is the environment for all illness, my genetic structure, and my DNA. I have the power to see this situation differently than I used to. Inherent within me is the power to create an inner environment that isn't susceptible to illness or disease. When I know that I have an option of awareness, I'm able to send away a possibly painful episode. I'm using all of the powers that this approach holds to talk differently to my body, and not only with respect to potential bronchial infections, I'm also employing it with sore joints, muscle pulls, cramping in my calves, stiffness, and any of the multitude of physical inconveniences that crop up in a 60-something body that loves swimming, running, walking, and doing yoga and other exercises on a daily basis. The key is to be aware that awareness itself is available rather than the same old tired, ego-dominated approach. The reason that awareness of awareness is so powerful is that it immediately puts me in touch with a dimension of myself that knows, here in awareness, all things are possible. That statement leaves nothing out, including the ability to realign with Source and introduce my genes to a whole new set of beliefs. Reading about and processing these cutting-edge scientific ideas triggered my entry into awareness. But it was my willingness to work on applying it where only old thinking habits previously resided that brought me to this new level where I feel as if I have an all-knowing friend with me at all times. This friend is called awareness. Here's another example of the power of awareness to alter some long-running thinking habits. Just being conscious of the fact that you are exercising can lead to better fitness. A recent Harvard University study published in a February 2007 issue of Psychological Science tracked the health of 84 female room attendants working in 7 different hotels and found that those who recognized their work as exercise experienced significant health benefits. The women were separated into 2 groups. One learned how their work fulfilled the recommendations for daily activity levels, while the other, the control group, went about work as usual. Although neither group changed its behavior, the women who were conscious of their activity level experienced a very significant drop in weight, blood pressure, body fat, waist-to-hip ratio, and body mass index in just 4 weeks. The control group experienced no improvements despite engaging in the exact same physical activities. The study illustrates how profoundly a person's attitude can affect her physical well-being. So if your daily routine keeps you on the move, start thinking of it as exercise. It may be enough to move you toward your fitness goals. Notice the opening line of this article, which said, just being conscious of the fact that you are exercising can lead to better fitness. Awareness takes you out of your customary thinking. As for me, since rewiring my thoughts to influence my body and even my DNA, my reality has changed significantly. Today, when I feel a heaviness in my chest or get a sore throat or pain in my joints or even a headache, I first begin noticing without judgment. I simply pay attention by observing uncritically and allowing myself to focus in a curious, gentle manner. By turning toward my higher self, all of ego's fears begin fading in its light. By becoming aware, without falling into ego thoughts of pain, disruption, annoyance, or creating other mental barriers, the symptoms move on through my system, which is in a state of higher consciousness. Where I once had a lifelong thinking habit that I didn't have the ability to adapt my genes to my perception or to rewrite my genetic codes with my beliefs, I now live in a new way. I gently notice my old ego-based beliefs whenever I note any kind of bodily malfunction. Awareness leads me to think totally differently, and it, sans ego, has put me into an instantaneous healing place on many occasions. The many paths of awareness. Awareness doesn't come to you exclusively from your intellect. Hafiz, a Persian poet in the Middle Ages, explains it this way, quote, "O thou who art trying to learn the marvel of love from the copybook of reason, I am very much afraid that you will never really see the point," unquote. In other words, studying these pages and memorizing the components of awareness will never replace experiencing it. So encourage yourself by spending time noticing where and what you're feeling in your physical body. This is the initial step toward achieving the consciousness that Lao Tzu speaks of. The mystical techniques for achieving immortality are revealed only to those who have dissolved all ties to the gross worldly realm of duality, conflict, and dogma. So said Lao Tzu. This is a telling message. I know that I see myself as an immortal being who receives guidance on awareness specifically because I let go and dissolve most of my ties to the world of duality, conflict, and dogma. The excitement of living from this perspective is beyond anything I can describe. It reminds me that I do exist in a place of all things are possible, and I apply this consciousness to all of my old thinking habits, and I encourage you to do the same. Know that you are a soul with a body rather than the reverse, and understand that this knowledge is your ticket to changing beliefs that keep you stuck in what Lao Tzu calls your shallow worldly ambitions. Awareness will remind you of who you are capable of becoming. All that you need will appear when you're vigilant about replacing old thinking habits with it. These days, the words infinite possibilities flash on my inner screen almost every waking hour. This phrase continually assures me that nothing is impossible if I can conceive of it and if I'm willing to apply awareness rather than excuses. Awareness allows me to perceive possibilities rather than difficulties, to feel connected to my source of being, and see the outcome as working rather than failing. I feel a dazzling rush of excitement when I think about no longer employing all the tired excuses that were handed down to me from my family, my schooling, my religious training, my government, ad infinitum. The messages were similar. These are your limitations. This is what you can do. This is what you can't do. This is the real world of competition and pain and violence and fear and hatred and so on. These ideas strongly influenced me, but I'm here to tell you that I now have a new and welcome outlook on the world of infinite possibilities. When you simply become aware, you cease being a victim to endless mind viruses that seemingly prevent you from accessing your complete fulfillment. You no longer find it difficult to change those familiar thought patterns that prevent you from living at optimal levels of success, happiness, and health. You consciously enjoy the knowledge that memes or genes or anything else in the material world don't have absolute control over you, and who you can become is unlimited. Your first response to any troublesome life situation isn't one of the 18 excuse categories from the last chapter. Rather, you shift to your awareness of awareness and tell yourself, hold on here. There's something beyond what I'm noticing, and I'm going to tap into it first. Madame Blavatsky, who was instrumental in introducing Eastern religions to the West, encouraged this kind of thinking. Here's what she said on this subject. Quote, "Have patience, candidate, as one who fears no failure, courts no success. Fix thy soul's gaze upon the star whose ray thou art, the flaming star that shines within the lightless depths of ever-being." Unquote. Here are 4 suggestions for implementing an awareness of awareness. First, develop a mindset that stays open to all possibilities. Refuse to rule out the ability to use awareness as your primary tool for combating long-held thinking habits. By being open to it, you invite higher awareness in. As I've said throughout this chapter, with this new approach, all things are possible, and that leaves nothing out. Secondly, practice using awareness at your own pace, in your own way, in circumstances that crop up throughout your daily life. Practice giving rather than asking for more. Practice being non-judgmental and offering help where you previously offered criticism. Want what you want for yourself, even more for someone else, and observe how much better you are in eliminating those old me-first thoughts that have demanded your attention in the past. Third, in childhood, repetition was something you most likely used to reinforce things you were mastering. You can probably recall insisting on someone reading and rereading a book or story until you knew it by heart. In that spirit, repeat this affirmation over and over to have it solidify and move from your subconscious habitual mind to the forefront of your conscious mind. Quote, I let go of old ways of thinking and I access awareness. And fourth, when you feel compelled to use an excuse, become aware that you no longer need to. Simply become aware of this new awareness. Chapter 5, the second principle, alignment. Quote, it is only by becoming godlike that we can know God. And to become godlike is to identify ourselves with the divine element which in fact constitutes our essential nature, but of which, in our mainly voluntary ignorance, we choose to remain unaware. That's by Aldous Huxley from the Perennial Philosophy. Ego-dominated excuses wouldn't exist if we were able to adopt Huxley's advice above, which paraphrases Plato and perfectly sums up the value of this second excuses be gone principle. Were we to become godlike and be steadfast in thinking in harmony with the universal source of being, which is our essential nature, then we simply wouldn't need to employ ego-dominated excuses. Alignment is a basic truth that functions as your personal code, unlocking the mystery of manifesting anything into your life. You can learn how to readjust your thinking so that it aligns with your essential nature and puts you in harmony with source energy. This symmetry will allow whatever you'd like to flow to you. Stay aligned with source and enjoy exploring an excuse-free life. At this very moment, you can begin to practice alignment. First, notice your thoughts and watch out for any of those habitually misaligned ones. Then just implement a different way of thinking that replaces the old habit. When you shift your thinking to align with an awareness of your essential nature, the energy is actually measurable. It turns out that we live in a universe that is all energy. Everything vibrates, and the frequency of those vibrations determines how everything appears, including our body, which senses our thoughts and has energy components that can be measured. Our physical universe and everything in it is a vibrating machine. The act of creation itself, bringing non-being into being, is a vibrational frequency. Personally, this realization has been an awesome awakening for me, leading to my knowing in my heart that I have the power to harmonize with the vibrational source and can activate whatever I focus on, and I believe that this ability is within every being. There's an invisible energy field from which everything originates. Through the first excuses be gone principle of awareness, you can realign with the same vibrational frequency of that energy field and access what I call divine guidance. Why? Because of what seems to be a law of the universe. Two frequencies that are alike are attracted to each other, and those that are unalike don't even recognize each other. Staying vigilant and continuously monitoring all thoughts causes you to notice what frequency you're transmitting and receiving. When you perceive that a thought is out of alignment, you can correct it. By doing so, you activate divine guidance because you're now thinking at the same frequency as source energy. Again, in the words of Lao Tzu some 2,500 years ago, quote, relinquish the notion that you are separated from the all-knowing mind of the universe. Then you can recover your original pure insight and see through all illusions. The breath of the Tao speaks, and those who are in harmony with it hear quite clearly. Unquote. Note that Lao Tzu urges us to see that this is a recovering project. That is, the rediscovery of our original nature, and that our goal is to simply harmonize with the Tao, or God source, in our thinking. So how does the Tao think? If you could measure such a thing, you'd see that source energy is a creating, giving, abundant, loving, joyful, non-judgmental, all things are possible, invisible mechanism. It is always giving, always serving, always an endless supply. It isn't really doing anything, yet nothing is left undone. It manifests being from non-being at a certain frequency. Your job is to align with this frequency while simultaneously disabling the old, slower, ego-dominated thought frequencies. Being stuck in lack, busyness, lost opportunities, bad luck, and so on is a misalignment with the frequencies of your original nature. I'm sure that you'd prefer being in a state of rapport with the all-creating divine mind as opposed to being stuck in the muck of excuses. Excuses are all misalignments. Listen back to Chapter 3 and consider what those 18 excuses I delineated say to you. Go down the list, and you'll see that they all focus on what can't be done or why it has never happened. The only thing an excuse gives you is an option out of the life that you'd like to live. Words like difficult, risky, can't, not strong, not smart, rules, too big, too complicated. These all excuse you from being the kind of person you'd like to be and were destined to become. Now consider how source energy seems to operate. Does it really seem that it's possible for God or divine mind to think in it can't be done ways? Of course not. The logic seems abundantly clear to me. Harmonize with energy that can do anything and everything, for this is your original nature. Excuses are evidence that you've discarded a way of thinking that's all-powerful for one that's all-limiting. In other words, it's imperative that you decrease ego-dominated thinking, which offers you mostly excuses, in favor of thinking that's aligned with all things are possible. One of the most common kinds of habituated self-debilitating ideas concerns money. I don't have enough money is a misaligned thought because money is in inexhaustible supply in the world. There is so much of it, in fact, that it would be impossible to create a calculator large enough to even count it. Now, in order to receive what is being transmitted, frequencies of thought have to match up. Thought energy is picked up by a receiver tuned into the same frequency. So if source energy is transmitting at 95.1 FM, tuning into 610 AM isn't going to transmit what you want to hear. Likewise, it's impossible to pick up on what universal source energy is transmitting if you stay misaligned and don't change frequencies to tune to it. Just sit for a moment and let these thoughts be received right now. You came from a source that has unlimited abundance. It is still generating that same idea today. You merely left it behind. But when you return to those frequencies of your source, you'll start to recognize them again. They'll begin to sound familiar to you. And ultimately, you'll be back in harmony singing the music that you sang long before you acquired an ego and began your journey of misalignment. While I'm using the example of money here, this logic applies to all the habitual thoughts or excuses you use to explain why your life isn't the way you claim to envision it. Therefore, I need to be healed is a vibrational match to I don't have access to perfect health, and God is withholding his healing power from me. You are a physical extension of the source of life, and that source is nothing but well-being. But you can't access this well-being when you vibrate to a different frequency. I need someone to live up to my expectations and to love me in the way I want to be loved in order to be happy is another common misaligned thought. Yet source energy is only about love. As Meister Eckhart wrote in the 13th century, quote, all God wants of thee is for thee to go out of thyself and let God be God in thee, unquote. So come on, wake up. Just let source energy be source energy in you. And source energy has no excuses built into it. It simply says that you are love and you are loved. And all you have to do to get this is to be a vibrational match to love. Or as the prayer of St. Francis puts it, where there is hatred or anything else that is not of source, let me so love. When you become that vibrational match and align yourself in this way, you'll see your desires begin to manifest for you immediately. Alignment is awareness in action. You may recall from the previous chapter that awareness is a representation of your highest self, the self that truly knows that it is a physical extension of the divine, the invisible source of all. Alignment represents movement into this state of awareness. Alignment is a verb. It connotes action, be it the action of literally changing old thinking habits so that they match up to your awareness, or the actual shifting of behavior so that you think and act as a God-realized, excuses-begone being. When you become aligned, your thoughts are no longer focused on what you don't want, but rather on what you intend to manifest as a co-creator with Source. The best way to begin retraining your mind is to consciously think in aligned ways, so consider the following. Your universal source of being never thinks in terms of what is missing. Do you? It never thinks in terms of what it can't have or do. Do you? It never thinks in terms of what has never happened before. Do you? It never thinks in terms of what others will think, say, or do. Do you? It never thinks in terms of bad luck or the way things have always been. Do you? Every time you have a thought that extends to a conversation with others about what is missing, what shortages you have, your bad luck, what always has been, how others don't understand you, and so forth, you're practicing a misaligned excuses mentality. But remember that your mission is to shift into the action state of realigning. This reminds me of a story I was told by a minister on Maui. It seems that there was a family who had a very rambunctious 5-year-old, and the parents were deeply concerned that he might inadvertently cause harm to his new baby brother. One night, while they looked into the nursery to ensure the safety of their sleeping infant, they overheard their eldest son ask his brother, "Would you please tell me what God is really like? I think I'm forgetting." Indeed, most of us have forgotten what our source of being is like, and it's particularly noticeable in the excuses we habitually make. It's my contention that the universe not only will but must provide you with what you conceive of. So if you complain about what's missing from your life, including the money that you believe to be in short supply, you'll be offered experiences that match that energy. When you say, "I love my job, but I'll never get rich at it," you're aligning with a frequency that will give you what you think. That is why I believe the rich often get richer. It's certainly been true for me since I left poverty behind some 60 years ago. By staying focused on what I intend to create, by believing that the universe is all providing, and by knowing that I'm worthy of the unlimited beneficence of the source of being, I just keep attracting prosperity to myself. And by being unattached to what shows up, which means that I have no desire for more and more, I'm able to let it go easily. What remains a mystery to so many remains a simple truth to me. Stay in a state of gratitude and let the awesome yet unexplainable Tao proceed to do nothing and yet leave nothing undone. Rather than asking for more, which implies shortages and therefore creates a vibrational match to more shortages, focus on what you have and how thankful you are for everything that has shown up in your life. To that end, keep in mind a happiness index that was recently taken for different countries around the world. It turns out that Nigeria, which is one of the poorest of nations with the least modern of conveniences, came in at number 1 for reports of happiness among the people there. The U.S. ranked 46th out of 50, despite having one of the highest standards of living in the world. Apparently, the emphasis in Nigeria isn't on the mantra of the ego, which demands more and more and more. Emphasizing needing more has built within it the idea of shortage, lack, and I don't have enough. Consequently, when you think more, you become a vibrational match to experiencing more shortage in your life, like it or not. Thinking alignment at all times. When you're thinking about the principle of alignment, keep in mind that source energy is ever present, and that you always have the power to bring yourself into harmony with who you really are. And who you really are is a higher awareness than your earthbound form. Just this simple idea, that you're not an ego-based self, but rather divine energy in physical form, will help readjust your energy. Once you recognize your divinity, you'll shift out of misaligned thought patterns. Such thinking focuses on what's wrong or missing, what others have told you are your limitations, what always has been, what used to be, and so on. Since everything comes in response to the vibration of energy, shift out of the lower vibrations and into the vibration of source. It's already here. I just need to connect to it. Nothing can stop my creative ideas from materializing. I've banished all doubt. I'll soon be seeing evidence of my manifestations everywhere. Now, this is a new kind of thinking. While it may sound too simplistic and naive for you, I'm encouraging you, as strongly as I know how, to give this retraining of your mind a chance. Note that the strength of non-physical energy is flowing everywhere. It's in you, but it's also in every tree, every flower, every bug, every planet, and everything that you want to attract to your life. The non-physical energy is pure, positive oneness, which only your thoughts can disconnect from or misalign with. It flows everywhere at once, and it's always creating, always loving, and always animating life. The only thing that keeps it from working for you is a belief that it can't, it won't, or it never has before. In other words, your excuses. The tremendous value of noticing the alignment of your thoughts will rapidly appear in your awareness. You can summon source energy whenever you slip into a misalignment. Just return to possibilities, manifestations, and your own sense of feeling good, which is just another way of feeling the presence of God. When you find it difficult to move into this alignment attitude, put more attention on your feeling self concerning your desires. For example, if that same old shortage of money surfaces, you may find that you can't stop yourself from being upset about the fact that you still believe that more cash would be your proof that this is working. Try something different and let the energy of what you're feeling reveal what's blocking your alignment. Even if you have to borrow a few $100s just to carry around with you and get the sensation of abundance, feeling prosperous, safe, secure, and positive concerning the flow of money will gradually align you with an abundant source. This has been my way since I was a little boy. I've attracted money into my life because I've always felt prosperous and deserving. That feeling motivated me to act, and I loved carrying groceries or collecting soda pop bottles or mowing lawns. My little bank account was growing while my brothers and friends spoke so often about not having enough cash. Today I'm still mowing lawns and collecting soda pop bottles, only on a much larger stage. And prosperity has never failed to flow into my life. I know in my heart of hearts that the journey from despair to hope and on to prosperity and abundance can be achieved with realigned thinking. I know because I've done it for a lifetime. And I trusted this under circumstances where it never could have been predicted that I'd emerge with unlimited prosperity as my calling card. No one else can do this alignment or realignment exercise for you. You must decide to stay in the feeling of love, prosperity, wellness, or whatever you desire, and let that feeling just flow through you. And remember that you get what you think about, whether you want it or not. Remain thoughtfully in the field of infinite possibilities rather than your negative emotions. Fear, worry, hate, and shame are indicators of separation from your authentic self in the present moment. When you come back to your authentic self, it will work full-time to deliver to you whatever you think about. Silently repeat the following. I get what I think about, and I'm choosing from here on in to think in harmony with my source of being until it is habitual. This is called alignment. What follows are 3 suggestions for implementing a realigned way of being. First, test your ability to access divine guidance. Think in harmony with source energy by taking on a small project. Choose any subject, bumblebees, light bulbs, feathers, pennies, anything at all, and do nothing but keep it in your mind. Generate pure, positive energy around this topic. See the feather or the penny showing up and feel good about this occurrence. Let your mind be at living peace with this item, and then become an observer rather than a demander, and notice what happens. By aligning with a field of possibilities in a non-judging, non-demanding, yet totally accepting way, you'll notice the manifestation into your life space of that which you're aligned with in your thoughts. Release any ideas that you're impotent when it comes to co-creating your life. Secondly, practice catching yourself when you're engaged in the habit of negative thinking. Monitor any thought that expresses it can't, it won't, or it's not my luck, and change it to an aligned thought such as it will, it must, or it's already here and I know it will arrive on schedule with divine timing. Change these misaligned thoughts or excuses 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day at a time. And third, affirm, I am aligned with my source in all of my thoughts, and with God, all things are possible. Continuously as many times as you can in a 5-minute period. The act of repetition helps the thought become a habituated method of alignment. Soon you'll emphatically say, excuses, be gone. Chapter 6, the third principle. Now. Quote, memories of the past and anticipation of the future exist only now, and thus to try to live completely in the present is to strive for what already is the case. Unquote. That's Alan Watts. You've heard it many times, so often in fact that it's become a cliche. Live in the present. The now is all there is. Forget about the past. It's over. Don't worry about the future. There's only today. While these are familiar refrains, the truth is that living in the now is an elusive activity for virtually everyone. It may be easy to say, but it's very tricky to do day in and day out. And yet, Alan Watts is absolutely correct in the above quotation when he states that it already is the case. That is why living in the present moment is so baffling. Think about the past, and you're not living in the now. But the now is the only thing available for thinking about the past. Live in anticipation of the future, and you're admonished for not being here now. But now is all you have for engaging in that delicious futurizing. Thus, as Alan Watts reminds you, you strive for what already is. To be in the now is really your only option. But the real question isn't how to live in the now, it's how to use the now by being present, rather than wasting it on reflections of the past or concerns about the future. And if you carefully examine the 18 categories of excuses detailed in Chapter 3, you'll discover that none of them apply if you master the art of being present. Ego, excuse-making, and the elusive now. After spending several days preparing to write this chapter, I was trying to focus on its significance when I decided to go for a long swim in the ocean. As I walked toward the water, I noted that I felt some tension in my solar plexus region. It wasn't anything serious, it was just that discomfort I described earlier that I often feel when I have many things to do or decisions to make. At the moment I was about to dive in, my thoughts went back to the reading I'd just finished on the psychology of the now. I decided to see if I could totally immerse myself in the moment, which of course meant that I was already striving for what already is the case, since I have no other moment other than this one. Only this time I'd be fully present, letting everything just be. I wouldn't worry about the ache in my chest, think about how cold the water would be, or which direction the current was flowing, or rehash all the things I had on my current to-do list. I'd simply be in the now. I indeed let everything else go and stayed focused on the instant, the place, and the surroundings. And something strange and wonderful happened. My chest stopped hurting. I loosened up. All of my anxiety dissolved, and I felt totally energized. For the next 60 minutes or so, I moved through the water, staying 100% present. The moment I decided to just be there completely, with all other thoughts pushed aside, the discomfort I was experiencing disappeared. Moreover, I had the most peaceful swim I've ever had, and I emerged from the water fully refreshed. My conclusion is that the present moment is an antidote for the pain and difficulties we experience, which we habitually try to soothe with rationales and explanations. When we plunge ourselves 100% into the now, experiencing it and nothing else, we're on an excuses-begone journey with no need for all of those old, habituated thinking patterns. In fact, excuses are simply what you've developed to explain now moments that are tangled in the past or the future. If you're truly in that blissful presence of the now, there's no desire to alter what is. When your sentences express that it's going to be difficult, or it's going to take a long time, or I'm not smart enough, or I'm too old, you're wasting a present moment with excuses from a not-now moment. And when are you having these thoughts? You guessed it, the only time you can have a thought is in the now. So if your present moment is being used up replaying why present moment thinking is incorrect, that is, making excuses, is it available for you to do something constructive? Obviously not. All excuses are avoidance techniques to keep you from taking charge and changing your thinking habits. If you weren't rehashing your excuses, but were instead immersed in the now, you'd be experiencing your own form of the bliss and healing that took place for me during my magical swim. You see, when I removed ego from the moment, I stopped thinking about myself and focused on being fully present. And then I was able to be truly here without ego's excuses. I had plenty of explanations for the tension in my chest, but when I moved totally into the now with no other thoughts, the excuses disappeared, along with the pain. The ego is a false self that believes in its separation. It strives to acquire and to achieve, and it's constantly in search of more. Just as it can't coexist with awareness and alignment, it can't survive in the now. When you luxuriate in the moment, it's impossible to ask for anything else, let alone more. The essence of living in the presence is total acceptance of precisely what is here. Your mind doesn't wander to what used to be, what ought to be, or what's missing, and you don't conjure up excuses. Rather, you have a heightened awareness of experiencing your highest self. You also feel a deep sense of connection to God, who isn't doing anything differently than God was doing an hour or a century ago, or will be doing a millennium from now. Your source energy is always only here and only now. It doesn't know how to be any other way. It has no plans, no regrets, no worries about the future, no guilt over the past. It simply is. And what is God doing? Nothing. And what does God leave undone? Nothing. By staying in the now and in a state of gratitude for all that is and all that you are, you tame the ego and you enter a state where excuses cannot even be considered. What excuse do you need when you're fully present? None. Of what use is ego, that false self, when you're with your source in the moment? Don't use up the now with thoughts of regret or worry. The experience of higher awareness is your reward. With ego in control, virtually every thought is making an excuse, focusing on what always has been or what you fear always will be. By befriending the present moment, you say goodbye to that troublesome ego. The issue isn't whether you choose to live in the now or not, because the basic truth is that it's the only thing that's ever available to live in. The past all occurred in the now. The future, which never comes except as a present moment, is all that's available. The real issue is how you choose to use up the precious moments of your life. You can choose higher awareness and suspend ego-dominated past-future thoughts, eliminating your reliance on excuses. Full immersion into the essence of the now is when you truly come face-to-face with your source of being. This is the great value of learning to become fully present. Befriending the now. Often the now is seen by ego as simply a means to an end, something to be endured to get to a future point. This means never getting to be fully here in the moment, since you're using it up anticipating where you'll be in the future. Of course, the future is endlessly always just ahead of you, as thoughts in your head, setting you up for a life of striving rather than arriving. However, this particular course in Excuses Be Gone takes quite a different stance. Rather than wasting time being annoyed because there's no such planning to do for the future, stop and remind yourself to be here now, as my friend Ram Dass suggests in the title of his famous book. To do so, befriend the now. See it as your ally, the only place you've ever been or ever will be, and do a brief meditation reminding yourself what this life experience is all about. One of my favorite techniques to bring me squarely into alignment with the present is to imagine what all of God's beautiful creatures do in every moment of their existence. They're not concerned with their demise. They bask in the exhilaration of the now. Every moment is fully experienced. I don't see any creatures seemingly hating what they're doing, cursing their lot in life, or arguing with themselves or each other over it. They don't make life an enemy and use up their precious moments in a state of anxiety or depression. Years ago, I was privileged to take part in a safari in the northern part of South Africa. The other members of the group and I were gathered for dinner one evening when we noticed 6 or 7 zebras grazing right outside of our tent. As we got a closer look, I noticed something that I've used ever since to remind me to maintain a friendly relationship with the now, rather than treating it as an obstacle to endure on the way to somewhere else. One of the zebras had been attacked during the night, and its right hind quarter and leg looked as